that made them sick.
That is now all health officials have to go on with the current outbreak in the absence of genetic tests confirming the presence of cyclospora on lettuce or any other source. Despite its retraction, the FDA yesterday said it still believes this multi-state outbreak to be linked to iceberg lettuce sourced from Taylor Farms in Mexico. That company had supplied Taco Bell and sold products to Walmart. It recalled its lettuce last week. To complicate matters, since the 1990s, Schaffner says there have been several cyclospora outbreaks occurring every summer, though this year is set to break records. He says often outbreaks aren't connected or even traceable to food. A person can also get sick from drinking or swimming in contaminated water, for example.
Just because you're sick with cyclospora right now doesn't mean that you're part of this cluster of cases that have an epicenter in Michigan and Ohio.
For now, while health officials suspect the primary contaminant is lettuce, the recommendation remains to avoid eating any of the recalled product and to wash hands and food surfaces. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
We've been taking stock recently of science that has not been done under President Trump. Federal advisory groups help guide the government on research and science issues. Since Trump took office, dozens of those groups have been canceled or frozen. Among them is one dedicated to preventing infection in healthcare settings. NPR's Katie Riddle reports.
Drug-resistant organisms are a vexing problem for infectious disease experts. For years, doctors have been waging war on dangerous bacteria like MRSA. But in the last decade, a new villain appeared on the scene, a fungus called Candida auris.
It was first identified in the ear canal of a nursing home patient in Japan in 2009. And it really wasn't around before that.
Scott Roberts is an infectious disease doctor at Yale. He treated one of the first patients in the U.S. with this fungus.
This was maybe 2018, 2019. And at the time, not much was known about it. And, to this day, we're still trying to grapple with where this came from, why is it spreading so fast? And it's a bit of a mystery.
Candida auris can survive on surfaces and cause life-threatening infections, especially in people who are immunocompromised. Once it takes up residence in a hospital, it's hard to evict. For all these reasons, says Roberts, he was grateful when the federal government stepped in to help figure out how to fight it by bringing it to the attention of the Healthcare Infection Control Practices Advisory Committee, or HICPAC. But in March of last year, that committee was terminated along with its efforts to help fight Candida auris.
And so to hear that we're losing a federal advisory committee on this and we're losing federal assistance is only going to make the problem worse.
Fighting dangerous fungi was one of the many problems that the committee was working on. It was staffed by a group of volunteers that brought perspectives from healthcare facilities, big and small, rural and urban, to work together on problems. The group would then make recommendations to the CDC to help guide policy. Hillary Babcock was one member. She says the reason this committee was important was not just because of their expertise. The CDC is already full of experts, she says.
They don't need help necessarily knowing, what does the literature show? But what they don't do is work in hospitals and healthcare systems.
Babcock is an infectious disease doctor in St. Louis. She says having this range of experts to give real-time feedback to the people working inside the federal government was invaluable.
So that's really what the committees bring to that space, is that sort of lived experience of how this guidance works in those settings.
In an email, representatives from the White House did not comment on this particular committee, but said that all committees that were terminated were, quote, found to be redundant, unnecessary, or ineffective, unquote. But industry groups like the American Association for the Advancement of Science have raised concerns that cutting these committees will hamstring urgently needed research. Carrie Wallenitz has for years worked with these federal advisory committees.
As a federal official, I found advisory committees to be really helpful to me in my sort of thinking and policy development.
Wallenitz was an official at the NIH. Now she works in healthcare policy and advocacy.
They would challenge me on things that I thought to be true. They brought up, real world issues that me from my sort of seat within government would not necessarily have thought of.
In the case of Candida auris, the number of cases in the U.S. continues to grow. Scott Roberts, the infectious disease doctor, says one of the reasons is that protocols around disinfecting for this specific fungus are not well understood.
If you don't adequately disinfect that medical equipment before you go to the next patient, you really risk transmitting it from one person to another.
Roberts says that's part of the reason this committee's work was so critical.
We really rely on federal assistance here to say, this is a recommended screening protocol. Everybody should be doing this.
Without these recommendations and guidelines, says Roberts, doctors like him are left with a patchwork of protocols. And that's no match for a sneaky, drug-resistant fungus. Katie Riddle, NPR News.
Later today, on All Things Considered, Jackie and Shadow are a pair of internet-famous bald eagles. Their nest is live-streamed 24/7. That nest is about 90 miles east of LA, near land that is cleared for development. The group behind the live stream is afraid that will hurt Jackie and Shadow. Eagle experts are less certain. Listen in the NPR app or on this public radio station. This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Layla Fadel.
And I'm Michelle Martin.
On the next Radio Lab.
I looked down. There was this great big head, these big white teeth.
We go swimming
It was just like so much fear building of what's going to come out of that blue.
with sharks.
It's coming towards you, mate.
Oh, it's huge.
Anything you dig down is fascinating in these creatures.
Yeah, sharks are crazy.
That's on the next Radio Lab.
Today at noon on Public Radio 89.5.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, partnering with Family and Children's Services Women in Recovery Program, an alternative to incarceration for women dedicated to changing their lives and the lives of their children. More at fcsok.org.
Get ready, turn right.
Public Radio 89.5, KWGS HD1 Tulsa.
Good morning. Iran has cut off one path used to ship oil out of the Middle East. Now rebels in Yemen want to block another. We hear from a former Secretary of the Air Force on the latest fighting in this hour of Morning Edition from NPR News. Paramount had hoped its merger with Warner Brothers would be done by tomorrow. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Layla Fadel. But it's on pause as a court reviews antitrust claims from a dozen states trying to stop it for good. Also, a leader of a Wisconsin mosque has lived in the U.S. for decades on a green card. ICE arrested him and held him for 80 days. A judge ordered him released, writing his speech on Palestinian rights is protected. It's Tuesday, July 21st. On this day in 2011, NASA's shuttle program ended as Atlantis touched down in Florida. The news is next.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Hurst. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth appears before the Senate Appropriations Committee today, asking for tens of billions of dollars in additional defense spending. This as President Trump heads to Dover, Delaware today to receive the bodies of 2 U.S. soldiers killed in an Iranian attack on a U.S. base in Jordan last week. NPR's Quill Lawrence has more.
I spoke with 3 former U.S. military officials about this new and rapidly evolving reality of drone warfare. One of them was General Joseph Votel, who formerly led CENTCOM. He said the U.S. had built up power in the region by building these bases.
Our strength for the last several decades has been our forward deployment and our positioning across the Gulf. Now they're seeing that same advantage has turned into a little bit of a disadvantage.
In Iraq and Afghanistan, the enemy had no real range or air power. But now in the age of drone warfare, Iran doesn't even really need an air force because its drones can travel 1,000 miles and hit U.S. bases all over the region.
NPR's Quill Lawrence.
The FDA has retracted test results identifying a cyclospora samples of lettuce from Taylor Farms in Mexico. NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports.
Cyclospora parasites are hard to test for and trace. The tested sample might not reflect the entire crop, for example. Plus, Rutgers microbiologist Donald Schaffner says there are often unrelated cases that crop up every summer.
Just because you're sick with cyclospora right now doesn't mean that you're part of this cluster of cases that have an epicenter in Michigan and Ohio. Sometimes we can figure out what's causing it, and sometimes we can't.
For now, regulators recommend avoiding the recalled Taylor Farms lettuce. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
Tropical storm Bertha is gaining strength in the Gulf of Mexico, threatening coastal areas of the Florida Panhandle, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, where tropical storm watches and warnings are posted. Mel Bridges with member station WWNO in New Orleans has more.
Originally, hurricane forecasters had the storm hitting the Florida Panhandle or even petering out in the Gulf, but current models show the system skimming coastal Louisiana. As Louisiana state climatologist Jay Grimes explains, it wouldn't take much movement for the storm to hit metro New Orleans as well.
Would require a big shift, just something on the order of 30 or 40 miles. Could bring higher wind energy and maybe more importantly, a little more rain into metro New Orleans.
Louisiana has already been hit by another named storm this hurricane season, post-tropical storm Arthur, which spawned at least 14 tornadoes across the state and left a wave of damage in coastal parishes in June. For NPR News, I'm Mel Bridges in New Orleans.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington. Lebanon's president meets with President Trump today in Washington, wrapping up a 4-day visit to the nation's capital. Joseph Aoun wants Israel to withdraw from large parts of southern Lebanon it occupies as Israel attacks the Iranian-backed Hezbollah militant group in that country. He also wants the U.S. to support Beirut in asserting full control where the militants had asserted control. This comes as Lebanon and Israel continue to hold rare direct talks mediated by the U.S. A federal judge has temporarily halted the proposed merger of Paramount, Skydance, and Warner Brothers. This pauses would be the largest deal in Hollywood history. NPR's Mondili Del Barco has more.
The judge ruled in favor of the temporary halt while considering an antitrust lawsuit filed by attorneys general from 12 states, including California and New York. They're trying to block the $111 billion merger, which they argue is unlawful. Last week, California AG Rob Bonta's office argued in court that the deal would unfairly give too much power to the combined company Paramount and Warner Brothers, resulting in fewer movies and TV shows made, job losses at the studios, and higher prices for consumers. All of these are claims that David Ellison's company, Paramount Skydance, denies. It's asking that any litigation be settled by the end of September, when the company would have to begin paying fees of $7 million a day for any delay. Mondali Del Barco, NPR News.
And I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include FJC, a foundation of donor-advised funds working to maximize the impact of charitable giving and to create customized philanthropic solutions. Learn more at fjc.org.
This is KWGS News in Tulsa. I'm Angel Ford. An extreme heat warning has been issued from noon to 8 p.m. today. The afternoon may reach as high as 105 to 115. Hot and humid conditions are expected to continue throughout the week. Coming up, new medical marijuana packaging rules set to go into effect this fall are frustrating dispensary owners. That story coming up right here on Public Radio Tulsa.
You've probably heard about a little parasite causing an explosive outbreak. Cyclospora is spreading gastrointestinal distress to thousands more people than usual this year. The CDC has linked a major cluster to iceberg lettuce from Mexico. But that doesn't explain all the cases. What you need to know about Cyclospora next time on 1A.
Join us this morning at 9 on Public Radio 89.5.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by Topeka Coffee Roasters, a farm-direct coffee company committed to a sustainable and ethical coffee future. From their farms in El Salvador to their cafes in Tulsa. More about their mission and roasted-to-order coffee at topekacoffee.com.
Public radio in HD from the University of Tulsa. Public Radio 89.5. KWGS HD1 Tulsa.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Layla Faldin. Good morning. There's now a new element of uncertainty in the U.S. war with Iran.
For 10 days, the two sides have exchanged strikes as Iran continues to assert control over the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Yemen's Iranian-backed rebels say they will blockade another waterway on the other side of Saudi Arabia on the Red Sea.
With me now is NPR's Emily Fang, who is in Tel Aviv to talk about this. Emily, good morning.
Good morning, Layla.
So tell us more about this threat of a blockade. Where would it be?
So it would be in this waterway called the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. It connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and ultimately the Indian Ocean on one end, and on the other, the Suez Canal all the way up to the Mediterranean Sea. And this strait lets Saudi Arabia, which is one of the biggest oil producers in the world, now get millions of barrels of oil a day out to the open ocean for export, and it needs this strait, especially because another waterway, the Strait of Hormuz, has been effectively closed by the U.S.-Iran war. So any Houthi blockade would rattle energy markets even more and raise energy prices even higher.
Wow. Just remind people, Emily, for people who don't pay close attention to this, who the Houthis are.
They are a Yemeni Shiite militant group. They're aligned with the militant group Hamas. They're supportive of Hezbollah in Lebanon and the regime in Iran. And you may remember them from when they were attacking ships in the Red Sea and snarling up logistics lines there. Yemen is where Saudi Arabia had intervened in the civil war against the Houthis. But then this month, Saudi Arabia crossed a 4-year ceasefire with the Houthis by firing missiles at a major airport in Yemen's capital. Saudi Arabia has not acknowledged these strikes, but this week a Houthi spokesperson declared a blockade. Let's listen to his video statement.
حظر الملاحة البحرية على العدو السعودي المجرم وفق معادلة الحصار بالحصار.
So here he says the blockade on Saudi ships was, quote, a siege for a siege, basically retaliation, an eye for an eye. Any Houthi blockade, if successful, is going to test Gulf state unity against the Houthis, against Iran, and it's going to further test energy supply chains. Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries around it have been exploring pipeline projects so we can ferry oil over land instead of by water. But Layla, those pipelines will take years.
And what about Iran? What's the latest from there?
U.S. CENTCOM said they struck Iran overnight, again in a 10th round of consecutive attacks. Iran has been pounding countries which host American military bases and infrastructure as a result, especially Bahrain and Kuwait, but also Jordan, where at least 2 American service members were killed last Friday. The 3rd is still missing. So in total, that brings us to at least 17 service members who've been killed so far in this war. Pentagon says 427 people have been injured. Iran's government says 3,000 people there have been killed in this war. But amongst all this death and destruction, there's still some efforts at diplomacy. Iran's foreign minister said on state television this week ending a war is possible, quote, through total military victory or through negotiations. And it's also said that it's received offers of diplomacy, but has not specified exactly what those are. And then U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. has also received some signals Iran wants to negotiate, but he's noted a split in Iran's ruling echelon between those who want to keep fighting and those who want diplomacy.
They'll have to work out that split internally. We're going to continue to respond. If the door opens to diplomacy, if the guys that want to do something productive for Iran win and take control of that system or take control of the negotiations, that'll be a very positive development.
But then he added, that's just not where the U.S. and Iran are at this moment.
That's NPR's Emily Fang in Tel Aviv. Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Layla.
For more on the widening fallout from the war in Iran, we turn to Frank Kendall. He served as Secretary of the Air Force in the Biden administration after a number of other senior positions at the Department of Defense. Mr. Kendall, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle. Good to be on the show.
So the renewed fighting between the U.S. and Iran over who controls the Strait of Hormuz has been going on for more than a week now. The strait is still not open again. Now we've just heard that there's another potential front. Do the U.S. and its allies have the means to break through a blockade on the Red Sea?
It's probably not the right way to think about it. The blockade, per se, quote unquote, is really they're threatening the ships that pass through that waterway, mostly with unmanned drones that they use to attack them, as they did during the Gaza conflict earlier. So this will make it too dangerous for shippers and insurers to send ships through that strait, at least from Saudi Arabia at least. So it's not a traditional blockade, which you can talk about as being broken. It's more harassing fire, which is enough to prevent shipping companies and insurers from using the straits. So it effectively does become a blockade.
So do we have the means to address this?
We did before, and we can do it again. We can suppress this threat, but it's hard to eliminate it. Basically, launchers like drugs that are moved around and concealed are used. So we can defend against those attacks. We can use our aircraft to go attack them and suppress them. So there are less out there. To eliminate them entirely is very difficult.
So let me ask about U.S. casualties. NPR has confirmed that the Pentagon has been withholding, at minimum, I think we can say fairly slow-walking, the number of injuries sustained by U.S. service members since the war in Iran started. Does this raise concerns for you about how the transparency of how this war is being conducted, as well as other things?
Yes, they do. I understand up to a degree the desire to not let the Iranians know how successful their attacks have been, how much damage they've done. But on the other hand, the American people do need to understand what's going on in this conflict and how it's proceeding from the point of view of both our losses or damage to U.S. installations and our allies. So there's a balance there that has to be struck. But this administration sees it struck it very much on the side of providing essentially no information.
And is there any mechanism to compel that information?
Not really. They keep it classified. Now, there are a lot of other sources that, besides the Department of Defense, there's overhead satellite imagery that's commercially available. There are witnesses on the ground and so on. So we do get some information.
But I just want to go back to the fact that there were 2 U.S. soldiers that were missing and the airbase majority that was attacked by Iran, not to mention the casualties or the injured that we've just mentioned. I think a lot of listeners are wondering how this could happen to the world's strongest military, and I think the question becomes, did the U.S. not have time to harden all of its facilities, or did the people just not anticipate that this could occur?
I've been to many of those facilities. I visited all the Air Force facilities in the region. There are defenses for them. There is some degree of hardening. But I think the U.S., for about 30 years now, has had the opportunity to operate aircraft in particular with a lot of impunity. I was an Army Air Defense officer once upon a time, and those defense systems like Patriot can be effective, but they're not perfect. And some of the threats are going to get through. It's almost inevitable that they're going to leak those. And we're consuming a lot of very expensive air defense missiles against some very cheap threats that are being set at as small unmanned air vehicles that are not in a great exchange ratio. So of the munitions that we've drawn down, I'm most concerned about Patriot THAAD missiles that are used to defend against some of those threats. So I think we're probably at this point being a little careful about how many of those we use. And so that makes us a little bit more vulnerable as a result.
We only have about 50 seconds left here, but it does make me wonder whether there was just not adequate planning here. It does make me wonder whether these could have been tabletopped at some level.
No, it has been many times. The reason no other president has done anything like this is because of those exercises and our understanding of how effective airstrikes would be and how Iran would respond to them, including closing the straits. I think it's an understatement to say there was no planning here. There was an unrealistic expectation. This would be a very quick and decisive and successful attack, and that is anything but what has happened.
That is Frank Kendall. He served as U.S. Secretary of the Air Force in the Biden administration, and he held other top senior positions in the Defense Department before that. Mr. Kendall, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to be with you.
18-year-old Nolan Wells has been laid to rest. Wells' body was found 2 weeks ago after he went to a July 4th party on Horn Island off the coast of Mississippi with friends. He was the only friend in the group who was black and the only one who did not return. The cause of Wells' death is still under investigation while results from the state and an independent autopsy are pending. Elise Gregg of the Gulf States Newsroom and Mississippi Public Broadcasting has more from his funeral yesterday.
I sought the Lord, and he heard, and he answered.
Center Point Church in Ocean Springs was filled with family, friends, football teammates, and community members celebrating Nolan Wells' life. His mother, Christine Wells Wansley, remembers
Let truth pop out of the ground like a flower. And let justice flow down like a water.
Sharpton and media mogul Tyler Perry are offering a combined $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest in the case. Here's civil rights attorney Ben Crump speaking to mourners. Crump is representing the family.
Whatever you would do for your children, if they on that boat on Horn Island on July 4th, we want you to do it for Nolan Wells.
Crump and other civil rights leaders have pointed to Mississippi's history of racism and urged a thorough investigation into Wells's case. Crump's team and law enforcement, he says, will review the contents of Wells's cell phone, which his parents say they tracked back to a friend's house after their son's death. Crump also said that the Jackson County District Attorney has said she'll turn over investigation results to a grand jury. On NPR News, I'm Elise Gregg in Ocean Springs, Mississippi.
Took to the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority's Advisory Council to voice their concerns.
House Bill 4454 was a Republican-led effort meant to address a growing health concern, the consumption of high-dosage marijuana products by children. How? Forcing producers to not package or label their edible weed in a way that might be attractive to children. Per the bill, that means no depictions of food, animals, or any caricatures. But advocates and patients like Austin Jones and Nancy Wallace say the law is confusing and hard to follow. November 1st is when the new laws for packaging edibles and other forms of medical marijuana take effect. But advocates say producers aren't getting the help they need from the state authority to ensure timely compliance. In Oklahoma City, I'm Brian Morales.
One thing advocates say could help is a team within the Marijuana Authority tasked with reviewing packaging submitted by vendors before they buy it bulk. It's unclear what action the authority may take. In other news, 5 lions from the Oklahoma City Zoo have arrived at their new home in Tampa, Florida. The cats are moving across the country as part of a decision made by the Association of Zoos and Aquarium Species Survival Plan for African lions. Born in Oklahoma City in May of 2024, Herman, Lou, Pascal, Hugo, and Henry will be kept together as a pack. Busch Gardens in Tampa has prepared a 35,000 square foot habitat for the 5 lions. The new area comes as an expansion to the park's Edge of Africa exhibit. They will be joining hyenas Daisy and Casey, who already called Busch Gardens home. In Tulsa, I'm Angel Ford, and this is KWGS.
For NPR comes from this station and from Progressive Insurance, now hiring for virtual and hybrid employment, offering opportunities for professional development and career progression. Position details can be found at careers.progressive.com. From the Andrew Carnegie Foundation, formerly Carnegie Corporation of New York, working to reduce political polarization through support for education, democracy, and peace. More information at carnegie.org. And from the University of Maryland Libraries, dedicated to making UMD's research available to everyone and advancing open access for the public good. More at lib.umd.edu.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Layla Fadel. On March 30th, Salah Sarsour started his day in Franklin, Wisconsin, planning to take his mom to the doctor. But when he walked out of the house, it became clear the day had other plans for him.
I saw this young man, coming toward me, and I saw like kind of a large gun next to him. I was kind of surprised what's going on. And immediately he approached me saying, "Are you Salah Sarsour?"
Soon, Sarsour says there were about a dozen cars parked in front of him. Some 20 officers got out of those cars.
One of them identified himself with a badge saying, Salah Sarsour are under arrest and with ICE.
I'm sure it had to be a mistake. He lived in the United States for over 30 years, has had a green card for most of that time. He's a respected leader at one of the largest mosques in Wisconsin and has a pristine record. He's also known in his community for his advocacy for Palestinian rights. And that advocacy, he says, is why the government is targeting him.
For me, it's very obvious. It's just because my activism and my stand with human rights and just causes, especially the cause of Palestine.
His lawyers say it's part of a trend by the government that started with the detention of college students last year who'd protested the war in Gaza. Sarsour was detained for 80 days, where he says he faced religious discrimination.
I requested for at least a prayer mat to have something clean under me when I pray, and they don't give me anything. Then I requested a Quran, and they don't have a Quran. They not allow us Muslim at all till I left to gather as Muslims and pray the Friday prayer, while they allowing Christians and other religion to gather and to do the weekly prayer together. I requested to use the same place for Muslims, and they refused.
Last month, a Trump-appointed federal judge ordered Sarsour's release. The judge said Sarsour had raised a, quote, substantial First Amendment retaliation claim, and that Sarsour's speech on Palestinian rights is protected.
He gave me hope in the system. This judge make me feel, wait a minute, there is still righteous people, there is still fair people here in the system.
Sarsour was born in Ramallah, in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, and his experiences as a teenager, that the government has long known about, are now part of the U.S. government's case to detain and eventually deport him. The Department of Homeland Security has called you a, quote, terrorist. They've pointed to 2 Israeli military court convictions, one for throwing Molotov cocktails and stones at the home of Israeli armed forces in 1989, and another in 1995, where you were convicted for attempting to hold weapons and ammunition. How do you respond to those accusations, the things they're calling you?
So I was arrested when I was 15 years old, 15 and a half, from my house in El Ramallah. The Israeli soldiers came to my house with weapons, and they arrested me as a child. From my house, they took me to the Israeli bad news prison there, and I went through full torture, actually. Even they threatened me with rape. Now, even the document they made us sign, like as a child, imagine, 15 years old, they make me sign a document in Hebrew language. I don't understand the word of it. And right now, to be honest with you, I don't know what I signed in that year, 1988. And after that, the judge kept me in prison for 23 months. And even the American government and the American embassy, they learn about my situation. That's why they give me a waiver and they give me the green card, because they understood that I went through this tough situation in my childhood. It's not like something secret.
Yeah, I mean, that's in your court documents, actually. In the judge's decision to release you, he mentions that the United States government has been aware of these charges against Mr. Sarsour for 25 years, having considered them in 2000, 2008, 2010, and 2019 in evaluating Mr. Sarsour's eligibility for naturalization. For people who don't understand, the Israeli military courts try Palestinian civilians in areas that are Israeli military controlled, correct, under occupation.
100%.
And human rights groups have documented abuses of the system, limited due process, and this has really faced scrutiny. Israel has defended the process. DHS also accuse you of lying on your green card application. What do you say to that?
I explained this point with the immigration in many meetings. There's questions if I did any crime, and I wrote no, I don't do any crime in the States. I have a very clean record in the States. I'm a businessman, family man, and a community person. So they wrote it now as if I'm supposed to say no, however, I did, or I went through what I went through in Palestine under the Israeli occupation. I don't have nothing to hide. I want to show the entire world, like, as what we go through under the occupation. So they consider it lie. I don't know how it's lie, and I'm still fighting this.
Now, Salah Sarsour is back home with his family. which includes 6 children and 9 grandchildren. During our interview, you could hear one of his youngest grandchildren trying to get his attention.
They're so attached to me.
Oh, they are?
Trying to run away from them. I don't know where their mom going.
He says returning to his community, his family, has renewed his strength.
I want to continue the fight for the future again, for my children, and to continue what I'm doing in my community. I mean, with the support I have and love I have, I want to just continue the fight until hopefully justice will prevail and this case will end in the right direction.
Salah Sarsour is the president of the Islamic Society of Milwaukee. He's a father, a grandfather, and a community leader in Wisconsin. Thank you for speaking with us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Leila. I really appreciate it.
We reached out to the Department of Homeland Security for a response to what Salah Sarsour said about his treatment in detention. The DHS spokesperson wrote in part, quote, "Any accusation of discrimination by ICE agents is false." They also wrote, "Thanks to this court order, this public safety threat is now loose on our streets." We also reached out to the Israel Prison Service to ask about Sarsour's account of torture and being forced to sign a confession in a language he didn't understand. We have not heard back. Sarsour's next immigration hearing is scheduled for Wednesday. This is NPR News.
Nursing is the largest healthcare profession in the U.S. and it's growing, but only around 1 in 8 nurses are men. Still, that's double what it was a few decades ago.
Will we ever be 100% gender neutral? I don't know that. Can we help move the needle a little faster? Sure, there's opportunities for that.
I'm Elsa Chang. One school's effort to draw more men into nursing. On All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by Green Country Habitat for Humanity, whose homebuyer program can help make home ownership possible for local families, opening doors to stability and generational wealth. More about moving from renting to home ownership at greencountryhabitat.org.
This is listener-supported public radio from the University of Tulsa. Public Radio 89.5, KWGS HD1, Tulsa.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. Hours after the U.S. military carried out a 10th consecutive night of attacks against Iran, an oil tanker came under fire from Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. Britain says the attack forced the crew to abandon ship off the coast of Oman. Separately, Jordan says its forces intercepted several Iranian drones fired at the kingdom today. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is criticizing President Trump for threatening new 50% tariffs on U.S. imports from Canada. As Dan Carpinchuk reports, Trump says he's responding to moves by Ottawa.
Carney's statement was carefully worded, saying the tariffs are the latest in a series that are in direct violation of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. Trump claims the new tariffs are in response to reciprocal tariffs levied by Canada a year ago, as well as a Canadian ban on American liquor and duties on U.S. auto and dairy sectors. The new tariffs won't apply to energy, potash fertilizer, critical minerals, and certain other goods. But Carney is defending Canada's action, saying Canada has merely matched U.S. measures. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says if they go ahead, they should be matched tariff for tariff. Quebec Premier Christine Frechette called Trump's new duties unjustified. Washington says the new tariffs will take effect in 30 days. For NPR News, I'm Dan Carpinchuk in Toronto.
This is NPR News from Washington. Tropical storm Bertha is expected to bring heavy rains and strong winds to coastal areas of Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana tonight and tomorrow. The National Hurricane Center in Florida says Bertha continues to move to the northwest as it churns in the Gulf of Mexico with top sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. Bertha will affect areas of Texas later in the week. More intense summer heat is expected today in areas of Washington State, Oregon, and California. That's where crews continue battling large wildfires. Heat advisories and red flag warnings are in effect in a number of counties. As Catherine Steyer-Martinez reports, Oregon recorded nearly 10,000 lightning strikes last week.
There are 25 large fires burning almost 375,000 acres across Oregon. and most of the activity is in central and northeastern parts of the state, says Jessica Newyear with the Oregon Department of Forestry.
We are essentially going into our new normal of more active seasons, more active fire behavior.
She says this year is shaping up similar to 2024's record-breaking season when more than 1.9 million acres burned. Whitney Taylor, a public information officer working on the Akawa Butte fire, a top priority fire in Central Oregon, says it feels like the state could be in for a marathon of a fire season. For NPR News, I'm Catherine Starr-Martinez in Bend, Oregon.
I'm Dave Mattingly in Washington.
On the next Radio Lab.
I looked down, and there was this great big head, these big white teeth.
We go swimming?
It was just like so much fear building of what's gonna come out of that blue.
With sharks.
It's coming towards you, bite.
Oh, it's huge.
Anything you dig down on is fascinating in these creatures.
Yeah, sharks are crazy.
That's on the next Radio Lab.
Today at noon on Public Radio 89.5.
Oh, yeah. Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, partnering with Family and Children's Services Women in Recovery Program, an alternative to incarceration for women dedicated to changing their lives and the lives of their children. More at fcsok.org.
Now in HD from the University of Tulsa, Public Radio 89.5, KWGS, HD1, Tulsa.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from the Wallace Foundation, an independent, nonpartisan research foundation collaborating with grantees and partners in the arts, school leadership, and youth development. More at wallacefoundation.org. From Jarl and Pamela Moan, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts. And from the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people at WTGrantFDN.org.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Layla Falden.
And I'm Michelle Martin. Good morning. The $111 billion merger between Paramount and Warner Brothers is on hold. A federal judge paused the deal for 14 days after a dozen states filed a lawsuit against it. The states argue the merger would reduce competition and hurt the entertainment industry. The Justice Department has already approved it. For more on this, I'm joined by Brian Stelter. He's the chief media correspondent for CNN, which would become a part of Paramount if this deal goes through. Good morning, Brian.
Hi, good morning.
So Paramount had already offered to voluntarily delay the merger when this ruling came down from a district judge in California. Can you tell us a bit more about the ruling and what strikes you about it?
Right. This judge in Northern California, Arcelia Martinez-Olguin, she says that the states are providing compelling evidence that this deal would substantially lessen competition in the theatrical market. Those are concerning words for Paramount because this judge is looking at the evidence the states have assembled and saying that this merger would harm competition. Now, Paramount's going to have a few weeks to convince her otherwise, but already from the jump, she is seemingly inclined to be persuaded by the state's arguments. So this is going to be a really dramatic antitrust showdown.
How much of a setback is this for Paramount, even though this isn't the final word?
This is a significant setback because Paramount has exuded confidence all along, ever since prevailing in the bidding war over Netflix back in February for those Warner Brothers assets. Paramount really needs to get bigger and quickly. It is instrumental and incumbent on the company. It's really, I don't want to call it existential, but it's really the company's entire strategy to get really, really big. Buy Warner Brothers, which is 6 times as big as Paramount's market cap, and scale up. Paramount says it needs to do that to compete with the likes of YouTube and Netflix and Amazon and Apple. But that's not what this antitrust case is really going to be about. The states have created an argument here that's about the theatrical market for movies and the cable TV licensing market. So essentially Paramount wants to talk about streaming and scale in the technology industry, but these Democratic state attorneys general, they want to talk about movies and how they're distributed. And so the arguments are going to be about that.
So the next big step in this case is a hearing for a preliminary injunction next month. How significant would it be if that's granted?
Right, that will really be the entire ballgame here. I don't want to mix metaphors, but Paramount was already on the 1 yard line. They're about to be complete with this merger. You know, they are so close to being done and taking over Warner Bros. Discovery. They've won all the approvals they need in all the markets around the world, except for the European Union, and that's probably coming tomorrow. And as you mentioned, they'd already secured approvals from the Justice Department in the United States. Paramount has cultivated a close relationship with the Trump administration. But for every reaction, there's a counter-reaction, and it does seem these Democratic states are reacting in part to what they believe might have even been a corrupt relationship there in Washington. Of course, Paramount has denied that, the Trump administration has denied that, but you have these Democrats in California, New York, New Jersey, other states, who feel like the federal government has dropped the ball, and so they are picking it up and running with it. And I find that to be a really interesting dynamic we've seen all across the country during Trump 2.0.
So we have about 30 seconds here, but Paramount has to pay more than $7 million a day to Warner Brothers shareholders if this isn't wrapped up by the end of September. Both companies have seen their stock prices fall. Do you think the leadership at Paramount is getting worried?
Definitely getting frustrated. Time is of the essence. The clock is ticking for the reason that you just laid out. But the judge in this case is willing to move quickly. She has assigned that April 3rd date. And essentially, in a case like this, the preliminary injunction phase is everything. Because if the judge agrees that the states are right, that this deal will be anti-competitive, if she puts an injunction in place in August, this deal will get delayed for many months. There will be a lengthy trial. That could be enough to kill the deal altogether.
That is CNN Chief Media Analyst Brian Stelter. Brian, thank you.
Thank you.
In a statement to NPR, Paramount wrote that the merger is, quote, lawful and pro-competitive. We are confident the evidence will demonstrate that the state AG's antitrust arguments are without merit. I want to mention Paramount and Warner are both financial supporters of NPR.
Today is the last day of voting in Arizona's primary.
How is the stage being set for some of the swing states' big races in the fall?
Joining us now is Cameron Sanchez with member station KJZZ in Phoenix to talk about this. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
So you spent a lot of time talking to voters. What stands out as the main things that they're thinking about?
Well, for Democrats, we've heard a lot about opposition to President Trump, and some voters do relate that to the cost of living. I spoke with Dorothy Garcia at her home in Scottsdale, Arizona, while I was tagging along with the Democratic candidate.
Medical, schools, taxes, water bill, light bill, electricity, things like that, yeah. The richer you are, the more you get. The poorer you are, the less you get.
For some Republicans, I do think the border, and since we're a border state, and immigration still remains a top issue, but there is concern that if Democrats win Congress, they'll allow too much immigration in their view.
Maybe the most competitive primaries there are for a House seat. It's a toss-up seat that Democrats hope to flip in their effort to take control of the House. Who's running there?
Right, this is a Phoenix metro area district which is currently represented by a Republican Congressman, David Schweikert, but he's running for governor, leaving an opening. So the front runners on the Democrats are former state legislator Amy Shaw and former broadcaster Riley Golan Woods. She's a former Republican who switched parties years ago. So both candidates say they can get the support of independent voters. They both tried to beat Schweikert before. 2 years ago, Shaw beat Golan Woods and others in the primary race but lost to Schweikert in the general election. But this year, Golan Woods has the backing of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And then on the Republican side, we've got former NFL kicker Jay Feely with a lot of name ID and Trump endorsement. But his opponent is a little further to the right. He's Joseph Chaplik, who was a member of the Freedom Caucus when he was a state legislator.
Turning to the race for governor, the incumbent is Democrat Katie Hobbs. Our listeners might remember she barely beat Republican Carrie Lake in 2022. Who are her potential opponents this time?
2 congressmen, Andy Biggs and David Schweikert. Biggs is seen as the frontrunner in this race. He's got Trump's endorsement and the backing of Turning Point USA, the organization founded by the late conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Biggs has been a Trump loyalist for a long time and voted against certifying the state's election results in 2020. But this go-around, Biggs is definitely leaning away from a far-right image and pitching himself as someone who can work across the aisle. Schweikert comes from that toss-up district where he does have experience appealing to independents.
What other races or trends will you be watching for?
The Arizona Secretary of State's race is one to watch because it highlights trends in Arizona politics like election security and the influence of Turning Point. In the Republican primary, we have a state lawmaker, Alexander Colladin, who's a member of the legislature's far-right Freedom Caucus, and he's an attorney who who participated in multiple lawsuits to try to throw out election results in 2020 and 2022. And his opponent, Gina Swoboda, had Trump's endorsement when she became chair of the state party, and there are MAGA entities who like her, but she's never outright claimed elections are stolen. That's an opportunity to see Republican voters' views on election denialism in 2026. The Republican primary winner will face incumbent Democrat Adrian Fontes in the fall.
That's Cameron Sanchez of KJCC. Thank you so much for your reporting.
Thank you.
This is NPR News.
Good morning. I'm Gabrielle Sangaleta at the BBC. 19 people in Indonesia have been convicted of trafficking at least 34 babies. Some of the infants were sent to Singapore and others were sold in Jakarta. Here's the BBC's Lisa Tangun.
It was revealed in court that the way that the trafficking ring operated was reaching out to parents via social media with an excuse of wanting to adopt their child. Later, it was actually found out that they were essentially selling these babies.
More than 8,000 people have signed an online petition in support of a Turkish governor who was dismissed after pictures of him in cycling tights spread across social media. The governor of the northeastern Ardahan province, Mehmet Fatih Cicukli, was removed on Friday. Joanna Keane reports.
The trouble began when images of him in tight cycling gear sparked criticism and mockery. There was then a heated debate in Parliament with an opposition politician calling for him to be dismissed. The online petition argues that Mr. Cicukli has boosted cycling tourism. He should remain in his post.
And rescuers in eastern Afghanistan are trying to reach residents trapped under mud and boulders after flash floods killed at least 23 people. Pictures on social media show homes, shops, and buildings that have been destroyed by the floods, which were caused by torrential rain. I'm Gabrielle Sangaleta at the BBC in London.
The Tulsa PAC Presents will feature another summer musical, this year Rodgers and Hammerstein's beloved classic Oklahoma, as they bring to life a celebration of love, rivalry, and the untamed promise of the American frontier. In a production that honors heritage, community, and the enduring spirit of our home state. Performance dates run weekends from July 24th through August 16th. Information on the production and tickets at tulsapac.com.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by Philbrook, presenting Roadside Abstractions, Route 66, and American Modernism. Take a road trip through modern art alongside iconic American artists, July 29th through January 3rd. More at philbrook.org.
Public Radio 89.5, KWGS HD1, Tulsa. National Public Radio for northeastern Oklahoma.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, supporting books, radio, podcasts, film, television, theater, and more to bridge science and the humanities. From Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org. And from the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Layla Fadil.
And I'm Michelle Martin. If you're a diehard soccer fan, or even if you've just fallen in love with the beautiful game, then you might be feeling a bit of a letdown right now. An emptiness, dare we say, because the World Cup is over. But despite fears over all the ways it could go wrong, the tournament seems to have been a success. Roger Bennett is here to recap. He is the CEO and founder of the soccer podcast Men in Blazers. Good morning, Raj.
Oh, Michelle Martin, you're an American legend.
Okay. So, we heard warnings that the Trump administration's immigration policies might keep fans away, that high ticket prices might lead to half-empty stadiums. That didn't happen. What did happen?
Yeah, it's amazing. The second Lionel Messi takes the field, the rational is replaced by the emotional cognitive dissonance kicks in, and we've all just emerged from a global 39-day odyssey that's, I think, peerless by anything that's made by Christopher Nolan, and they were the best team, Spain, utterly victorious, the best player in the world, Lionel Messi, sobbing in tears with the world watching, and it all happened here, Canada, Mexico, the United States. It was really a fever dream of human revelation.
So, there were some controversies. The Somali referee who was turned back at the airport, the treatment of Iran's team, President Trump's red card intervention with FIFA. A lot of people had issue with the VAR, the whole video assistant review. Did that take some of the shine off for you?
Yeah, football is life and death and rebirth, all of the things, and we can't lose sight of those. That existed alongside so much human joy, collective memory making. The football was phenomenal on the field. The biggest players in the world all delivered. Lionel Messi, America now knows her name, Kylian Mbappe, was falling in love with the kind of Viking Shaquille O'Neal, Norway's Erling Haaland. But it was really off the field that I think the most important things happened. The teams, Cape Verde, small teams, Congo, Curacao, charmed with their diasporas, charmed America. The Scottish invasion of Boston, Rock Chalk, Algeria and Kansas, where they fell in love out of nowhere with the North African team. The world discovering Bucky's, really Waffle House diplomacy. The world finding America, falling in love in a way we needed to be loved. I think Michelle will be one of the lasting legacies of this tournament.
What about you? What are your best memories?
I went across the United States in an enormous orange Home Depot bus. We did college game days across the United States, and to make cross-generational memories with millions of Americans, it was like the honor of my life, and someone who wants this game to grow in America and saw it growing deeply before my eyes. I think marching to the match in Seattle with Marshawn Lynch and 15,000 Americans before the game who dreamt that everything was possible. It wasn't, but it felt like it was in the moment. The Americans coming from Alaska, Hawaii, across the East Coast, thousands of them. The power of the memory making that we experienced in that moment, I think will be with me forever. The song Country Roads that the Americans sang was so beautiful. Now it sounds sadder than Johnny Cash's Hurt, but that's football, life, death, rebirth.
How long are you going to sleep? And how long is it going to take you to get ready for the Women's World Cup?
Yeah, you've nailed it. Women's World Cup, 339 days away. And you know what, Michelle? The United States are very, very good at that one. I can't wait.
That is Roger Bennett, CEO and founder of the Men in Blazers Media Network. It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Layla Fawzi.
This is KWGS. Nearly everywhere in Oklahoma is expected to see air temperatures above 100 degrees today. Grayson Wheeler has more on how to make it through the heat dome.
Infants, children, pregnant people, and older adults are at higher risk of heat-related injury. So are people who work or live outside, lower-income households, and people in rural communities. During heat advisories, public health officials recommend drinking plenty of water even if you aren't thirsty. Cover your windows to insulate your home from outside heat and minimize use of the oven or stove. Be certain not to leave children or animals in an unair-conditioned vehicle for any amount of time. In high heat and high humidity like we see in Oklahoma, fans may not be enough to cool you down. Public libraries, shopping malls, and other public spaces may offer an air-conditioned respite from the heat. OG&E maintains a list of cool zones where air conditioning is available when you need it at oge.com/coolzones. In Oklahoma City, I'm Grayson Wheeler.
An extreme heat warning is in effect for central and eastern Oklahoma Tuesday afternoon. Oklahomans will elect a new commissioner of labor this year. Primary voters narrowed down the number of candidates, but as Sierra Pfeiffer reports, 2 Republicans are still vying for the party's nomination.
Republican voters chose their top 2 picks, the state's next labor commissioner, last month. State Representatives John Pfeiffer and Kevin Woods. The 2 will face off in a runoff election in August. Pfeiffer says he vows to bring conservative leadership, workforce development, and a pro-business mindset to the department. West says his top priorities include rebuilding the pipeline of skilled trades, promoting safety, and supporting small business owners and contractors. The GOP winner will compete against unopposed Democratic and Libertarian candidates Kevin Dawson and Mike Hall in November. In Oklahoma City, I'm Sierra Pfeiffer.
how the country's biggest labor union is mobilizing its members when it comes to AI. But first, Boeing eases back into the good graces of federal regulators.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab. At Schwab, investors get choices ranging from self-directed investing to full-service wealth management all in one place. Learn more at schwab.com.
From Marketplace in Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams. Boeing got a dose of good news this week. The Federal Aviation Administration is close to approving 2 models of the plane maker's 737 MAX to fly again. Airlines have been waiting for years to get newer, more fuel-efficient aircrafts from the company. Regulators increased scrutiny of Boeing after 2 deadly crashes and a 3rd incident in which a panel of the jet's fuselage blew out during a flight. Marketplace's Nova Safo has more.
Originally, Boeing thought it would deliver the smallest MAX variant by 2019 and the largest by 2023. It's taken a lot longer.
These changes start to get, the regulatory monkey, so to speak, off of Boeing's back.
That's aviation analyst Robert Mann. Airlines are eager to get the planes too, says Dan Bubb, an aviation historian at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
They want to replace their older planes that are gas guzzlers, that are costing money, because fuel is 30 to 40% of an airline's overhead.
Boeing says MAX planes are 18% more fuel efficient. Airlines also want to fly just the right size aircraft for each route. And on some, that's meant only Airbus planes, unless you fly an old gas guzzler, says Vladimir Bilotkach, Associate Professor of Aviation Management at Purdue.
The MAX 7 and MAX 10, they are going to allow Boeing to compete head-to-head with Airbus on those market segments where Airbus essentially does not have competition at this point.
Bilotkach says for airlines that only fly Boeing planes, including Southwest, or mostly Boeing, such as United, this could mean being able to offer new routes, and more competition could lower prices for passengers. I'm Nova Safo for Marketplace.
Let's do the numbers. The FTSE in London is up 0.2%. Dow, S&P, and Nasdaq futures are up in the 0.2 to 1.2% range, with the Dow future up 84 points. The 10-year Treasury yield is up at 4.61%. And the latest escalations in the war with Iran are pushing up the price of Brent crude, now trading at $90.88 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude is trading at $84.92 a barrel.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Ninja One, unifying IT operations for businesses globally with solutions to support IT resilience and operational efficiency. Unify IT, simplify work, Ninja One.
Organized labor could play a major role in this year's midterm elections. The nation's largest federation of labor unions says it plans to mobilize 16 million voters with ties to the labor movement. Liz Shuler was recently re-elected president of the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations, better known as the AFL-CIO. I recently spoke with her at the Aspen Institute's Business and Society Summit and asked her how the AFL-CIO is factoring in union members' concerns and opportunities when it comes to AI in the lead up to the midterms.
AI is a huge driver because we're already seeing the impacts in the workplace. We just saw GM, for example, introduce 50 new robots that displaced 1,000 workers. There are lots of examples, even in traditional industries. So I think this is going to be a huge motivator in the upcoming election, certainly in this midterm, but in the presidential election of 28, I believe it will be the issue that really drives people to the polls.
The Trump administration has pushed a very deep regulatory strategy at the federal level. Obviously, they're quite pro-AI, crypto, a lot of these things. So does that mean that more of your strategy is focused at the state and local level on some of these issues?
I've been alarmed at how little progress we've made federally, frankly, on the issues of AI and technology. We have focused more at the state and local level simply because people are closer to the ground, and those state and local elected officials are the ones really feeling the impacts from their constituents. The pressure that you build on the ground in local communities ultimately filters up to Congress, and as I said, in the midterms and then certainly the presidential election of 28 is when we're really going to start to see the momentum build.
I've heard from several folks that there seems to be an atmosphere of forced inevitability around AI, that you have tech leaders in particular making decisions that this is coming for all of us, whether you want it or not, and we don't have a choice. What choices do workers still have in this moment?
That's one of the biggest things we hear from workers is this feeling of powerlessness. But we do still have a window, I would say, of at least 2 to 3 years where we can come together and chart the course in a way that is going to benefit everyone. We don't just have to go along to get along. We can actually put those safety guardrails in place. We can pass legislation that makes this sane for actual human beings who are, by the way, the last time I checked, we're a 70% consumer-driven economy. Those are the people that are going to be losing their jobs, that aren't going to be able to afford to buy things. And this is going to have a ripple effect across the entire economy. It already is.
So how is that shaping the message that you at the AFL-CIO and your members are sending to lawmakers in the midterms?
We're doing a massive education effort and then a massive mobilization around it so that locally we're building up committees, we're building up an army of folks who can go out and talk to their both, state and local officials, but also their elected leaders in Congress and certainly for the White House. We're going to follow you around. We're going to ask you, are you putting workers at the center of your AI plan? Are you holding these companies accountable? Are you looking at policies that are going to make it safe for working people, make it economically feasible, not just for companies, but for the people who work for a living? We're going to be there. And so I keep saying, I don't care if you're Donald Trump or Gavin Newsom, worker first AI policy has to be what you wake up thinking about in the morning.
Liz Schuler is the president of the AFL-CIO. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Our producers are Emma Condon, Tamar Fagan, Ashley Rodriguez, Ariana Rosas, and Erica Soderstrom. Our senior producer is Alex Schroeder. Our supervising senior producer is Meredith Garrettson-Morby. In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APN, American Public Media.
On the next Fresh Air, Andre DeShields. He won a Tony for his performance in Hadestown. He's also in the new film of last year's London revival. He's now on Broadway in Cats the Jellicle Ball. DeShields describes himself as Afro-queer, a longtime HIV survivor, and an unreformed hippie who grew up in Baltimore's innermost inner city. Join us.
This afternoon at 3 and tonight at 9 on Public Radio 89.5.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by Topeka Coffee Roasters, a farm-direct coffee company committed to a sustainable and ethical coffee future. From their farms in El Salvador to their cafes in Tulsa. More about their mission and roasted-to-order coffee at topekacoffee.com.
A listener-supported service of the University of Tulsa. Public Radio 89.5, KWGS HD1, Tulsa.
Good morning. The Pentagon hasn't explained its mission in Iran to reporters in months. It's been slow-walking information about casualties. What questions does Senator Chris Murphy have for Secretary Pete Hegseth? It's Morning Edition from NPR News. President Trump went after reporters at the New York Times who wrote there were security concerns with the new Air Force One from Qatar. I'm Layla Fadel.
And I'm Michelle Martin. Then Trump said the plane still needs to be maxed out.
Get ready to turn right.
Also, a family takes the Trump administration's offer to leave the country. And singer Syd's latest album is inspired by the peach fuzz on her upper lip. It is Tuesday, July 21st. On this day 3 years ago, the incongruous but somehow still perfect pairing Barbie and Oppenheimer. Barbenheimer hit theaters, earning $235 million opening weekend. News is next.
Live from
NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Iran's interior minister is meeting Pakistan's military chief today, according to Iranian state media. It's one of the first visits by any leading Iranian official to Pakistan since this cycle of clashes between the U.S. and Iran started in mid-June. NPR's Dia Hadid has more.
Pakistani officials, led by the Army Chief of Staff, Field Marshal Asim Munir, have been mediating between the sides ever since the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran in late February. Pakistan mediated the first ceasefire between the US and Iran on April 8. Then in mid-June, the country mediated a memorandum of understanding. It was meant to lead to negotiations for a comprehensive peace deal. But early this month, Iran targeted 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz. It said they had violated the understanding, which Iran interprets as giving it control over the vital waterway. Clashes have been escalating since. Pakistani officials have called on both sides to adhere to the memorandum. Dia Hadid, NPR News.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth heads to Capitol Hill today to ask the Senate Appropriations Committee for a nearly $90 billion funding boost, most of that for military operations in Iran. This as President Trump heads to Dover, Delaware today for the dignified transfer of American service members killed over the weekend in the U.S. war against Iran. 2 died in an Iranian strike on a base in Jordan Friday. 1 is missing. Another died in a drone incident in northern Iraq Saturday. Gas prices are on the rise. The national average for a gallon of regular has again topped $4, as NPR's Stephen Basaha reports.
All sorts of travelers are feeling the rise in costs. Commercial truck drivers, diesel is now above $5.10 a gallon nationally. Flyers, at the start of July, domestic flights were up about $93 on average from a year earlier, according to the travel site Kayak. And if you're trading in crude oil, a barrel started the week priced above $82, up about $25 since the year's start. Average gas prices peaked around $4.50 in May, but the ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran brought those prices down. Now, with ceasefire over and fighting intensifying, prices are climbing again. Stephen Basaha, NPR News.
Arizona is the only state with a primary election today, and the results will help determine control of Congress. From member station KJZZ, Cameron Sanchez reports.
Arizona is a purple state with several competitive races, including the one for the state's first congressional district. The winner there will replace longtime Republican Congressman David Schweikert, who is running for governor. Former NFL kicker and Trump endorsee Jay Feely is the Republican frontrunner. On the Democratic side, candidates Anish Shah and Marlene Belong Woods have a shot. All of Arizona's statewide offices are also up for election and are mostly held by incumbent Democrats. Republicans hope to take back the offices of Governor, Secretary of State, and Attorney General this year. For NPR News, I'm Cameron Sanchez in Phoenix.
This is NPR News. The White House says the luxury jet gifted to the U.S. by Qatar will get an upgrade this fall, though it's not clear what those upgrades will be. It will be out of service for a month. The plane has already undergone $400 million worth of renovations. Qatar gifted the Boeing 747 last year after President Trump complained, saying the plane used as Air Force One was too old and too small. New research from the American Heart Association looks at how many cups of coffee each day are safe to drink. NPR's Maria Godoy has more.
In a new scientific statement, the AHA says drinking up to 5 8-ounce cups of coffee per day, or about 400 milligrams of caffeine, is generally safe for most adults. It also appears to be linked to a lower risk of several cardiovascular conditions, including heart failure, heart disease, and stroke in some people. Research has linked drinking caffeinated coffee without added sugars, flavors, or cream to a lower risk of conditions including type 2 diabetes and heart disease. Adding sugar, milk, or cream likely reduces the health benefits, the AHA says. However, the group says drinking caffeine in high doses, such as those found in energy drinks and energy shots, could increase the risk of high blood pressure and irregular heart rhythm and should be avoided. Maria Godoy, NPR News.
U.S. futures contracts are trading higher this morning. Dow futures are up about 136 points. NASDAQ futures are up 397 points. I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Joyce Foundation, committed to advancing racial equity and economic mobility for the next generation in the Great Lakes region. Learn more at joycefdn.org. This is NPR.
This
KWGS News in Tulsa, I'm Angel Ford. An extreme heat warning has been issued from noon to 8 p.m. today. The afternoon may reach as high as 105 to 115. Hot and humid conditions are expected to continue throughout the week. Coming up, new medical marijuana packaging rules set to go into effect this fall are frustrating dispensary owners. That story coming up right here on Public Radio Tulsa.
On the next Radio Lab.
I looked down, and there was this great big head, these big white teeth.
We go swimming.
It was just like so much fear building of what's going to come out of that blue.
With sharks.
It's coming towards you, mate.
Oh, it's yours.
Anything you dig down is fascinating in these creatures.
Yeah, sharks are crazy.
That's on the next Radio Lab.
Today at noon on Public Radio 89.5.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by the Ann and Henry Zarrow Foundation, committed to supporting nonprofits that alleviate hunger, reduce homelessness, and improve mental health and healthcare access in Oklahoma. More at zarrow.org.
From the University of Tulsa, this is Public Radio 89.5. KWGS HD1 Tulsa, made possible by your financial support.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Layla Faldin. Lawmakers are seeking answers about the war in Iran from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth today.
The White House is asking for a nearly $90 billion funding boost, most of that for military operations in Iran. In a few minutes, we'll speak with one of the senators set to question Hegseth, Democrat Chris Murphy of Connecticut. It's been more than 2 months since Hegseth testified on the Hill, and the Pentagon hasn't briefed reporters since May. Hegseth's appearance comes as President Trump travels to Delaware to receive the bodies of 2 U.S. soldiers killed in Jordan last week.
Here with more is Quill Lawrence from NPR's National Security Team. Good morning, Quill.
Good morning.
So what else do we know about the U.S. casualties at this point?
This Iranian attack on a joint U.S.-Jordanian air base on Friday killed 2 soldiers and others missing and believed dead. There was another drone-related casualty at a U.S. base in northern Iraq over the weekend. I spoke with 3 former U.S. military officials about this new and rapidly evolving reality of drone warfare. One of them was General Joseph Votel, who formerly led CENTCOM. He said the U.S. had built up power in the region by building these bases.
Our strength for the last several decades has been our forward deployment and our positioning across the Gulf that has reassured partners and put us in a position where we could be responsible for things. But now we are seeing that same advantage has turned into a little bit of a disadvantage in the face of missiles, especially drones. It has also highlighted a significant vulnerability.
So in Iraq and Afghanistan, the enemy had no real range or air power. But now in the age of drone warfare, Iran doesn't even really need an air force because its drones can travel 1,000 miles and hit U.S. bases all over the region.
Does it mean anything that after 3 months there were suddenly 3, perhaps 4 casualties over the weekend? Has something changed?
Just that for 10 nights now, Iran and the U.S. have been escalating tit-for-tat bombardments. Iran has stepped up attacks. It's possible they just got lucky, or that the U.S. had been very lucky so far. General Votel said that while any death is tragic, these numbers seem low considering the waves of missile and cheap armed drones that Iran's been throwing at these U.S. targets. Anyone comparing these wars to Iraq and Afghanistan, the casualties here are an order of magnitude smaller, and there are ground troops involved. But one similarity is that there isn't a clear cause or goal that can help the American people understand why these troops have died. You know, one of the servicewomen who died on Friday, she was just 19.
It's so young. We mentioned the Pentagon hasn't briefed on the war since May. Is the Pentagon purposely withholding information from the public, including on the wounded?
A U.S. military official who was not authorized to speak publicly confirmed with NPR that the Defense Department has been slow-walking information on casualties. And just this week, the Pentagon spokesman admitted after questions from journalists that 100 service members have been injured in the last 2 weeks. He said the vast majority recovered quickly and went back to work. It's also not clear how much damage has been done to these bases. There's concern in Congress about the rapid depletion of U.S. munitions, which is something Hegseth is bound to get questions about today. 3 former military officials I spoke with said that the Pentagon's poor communication has caused a lack of trust. One said, they just don't have much credit. General Votel pointed out that it's not only credit with the American people and Congress, but the U.S. has been leaving key regional allies in the dark. And they're the ones who are bearing the brunt of all these Iranian attacks.
NPR's Quill Lawrence, thank you for your reporting, Quill.
Thank you.
One of the lawmakers who will question Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth later today is Senator Chris Murphy. He is a Democrat from Connecticut and a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
So what are some of the questions you have for Defense Secretary Hegseth today?
Well, the first and most obvious question is, what is the end game? It appears that the war goals have been reduced to one, getting the Strait of Hormuz reopened. At this point, there seems to be no hope to significantly degrade their missile capacity or their drone capacity. And so right now, I think all that can happen is that Iran once again agrees to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but their price is probably higher than it was a year ago. And one of the most important things we can do today is simply confirm that the administration has decided to narrow its war aims to simply getting that strait open. And we'll be asking the secretary what the price that they will be willing to pay to get that done.
NPR has confirmed a New York Times report that the Pentagon has withheld, or at the very least slowed dozens of military injuries in this war. The administration argues that this is strategic. This is for operational security. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no excuse to withhold from the American public the full cost of this war. Obviously, the American people know what the cost is, as gas prices are back over $4 a gallon. Diesel prices and fertilizer prices are through the roof. We've seen the biggest increase in the rate of bankruptcies for farms in the last 10 years over the course of the war. But the cost is also American lives. It's not just in those that have been killed, and that number is rising, it's also in those wounded, those lives that are permanently changed by the injuries of war that they'll bring back home. We also don't really have a great sense of the battle damage that's been done. There's reports now that we don't have the ability to protect our troops in theater because so much of our air defense and interceptor capability has been damaged by the Iranians. The casualty numbers may be increasing at an exponential rate over the next few days and weeks because the Iranians are able to more easily pierce our air defenses as they have been substantially damaged by this campaign. So the worry is that these injuries and these deaths for our troops are going to accelerate as we have less of an ability to protect them.
So let me go back to this question of the appropriations. On the Appropriations Committee, analysts have been raising concern for months that the U.S. doesn't have enough missiles or interceptors to engage in a high-intensity conflict or a full-blown war, if we want to call it that. Do you share those concerns?
I do share those concerns, but it's not just a concern relative to this theater. Our other adversaries are watching us right now as we significantly deplete our missile stocks and our interceptor stocks. For instance, obviously we know that China is contemplating making a move at some point on Taiwan. Now it'll be up to the American public as to whether the United States steps in and defends Taiwan. But there's a vulnerability because if that conflict were to break out today, the United States doesn't have an ability to fight another front. It's going to take us maybe the better part of a decade to replenish the interceptor capacity and the missile capacity that we've lost. So this is not just about an exposure for U.S. troops in the Middle East. This is about a signal being sent to other adversaries around the world like China that it might be time for them to move. We've opened ourselves up to a massive vulnerability, not just in the region, but globally.
Well, isn't that a reason then why Congress should provide this supplemental defense funding?
Well, again, as I mentioned, the problem here is that we can't replenish our stocks in a way that will adequately protect our troops in the Middle East today. And the reality is they're going to use those munitions not to shore up our global defenses, but to continue the war in Iran. And the American people don't want this war. It's an illegal war. One of the only mechanisms that Congress has to stop an illegal, unpopular war is to deny the administration funding. And so for me, I am not going to support any additional funding that's going to be used to carry out a war that's making America less safe, that's getting thousands of people killed in the region, and is driving up costs for Americans back at home.
Before we let you go, just briefly here, are you at all worried about the politics of that? I mean, that defense authorization bill that the Senate Democrats blocked last week, it's one of the few pieces of legislation that normally gets bipartisan support. Could holding up races for troops and investments in things like childcare, their families, any worries that could backfire?
I mean, right now, this is our only mechanism to end this war. And the American public have weighed in very clearly. They don't want this war to continue. They don't want to bear the cost of it. They don't want any more Americans to die. They don't want the Middle East to continue to spiral out of control. So if denying funding for this war is our only mechanism to end it, I think that's exactly what the American public want us to do.
That is Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. He is a Democrat. Senator, thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to mention that NPR has reached out to Senate Republicans for their perspectives on the war in Iran, and those invitations remain open.
Federal officials say a U.S. Army vet started a large fire, shot a pellet gun, and set off a firework outside a building where ICE has offices in New York City yesterday morning. Reporter Gwen Hogan says 3 people suffered minor injuries.
Federal authorities identified the man involved as 43-year-old Andrew Arabaka, who'd been in the Army where he worked as a Patriot missile mechanic in the early 2000s. The Department of Homeland Security is calling him an anti-ICE rioter, and federal charges against him are still pending. Videos posted to social media show a man dumping a bucket of liquid and lighting it on fire, followed by clouds of smoke. Arabaka was apprehended within minutes and quickly tackled to the ground by federal officers on scene. The attack happened outside 26 Federal Plaza, a towering government office building in Lower Manhattan. Inside, ICE has several floors of offices where immigrants can be arrested, as well as holding cells for immigrants after their arrests. James Barnacle, the assistant director of New York's FBI field office, told reporters yesterday Arabaka had a sign with him that read, "ICE off our streets," and yelled derogatory statements about ICE during his arrest.
Mr. Arabaka came armed with bad intentions. I will say that 26 Federal Plaza has long been a target of extremists, of terrorists, and today the extremism was brought here.
The building has been the focal point of many protests since ICE arrests ramped up under President Donald Trump last year. But they've largely been peaceful. Of the 3 people who had minor injuries, Barnacle said 2 were government employees and 1 was a bystander, an immigrant trying to attend their court hearing. Arabaka is in federal custody, waiting to be charged. Information about a lawyer representing him wasn't available right away. For NPR News, I'm Gwen Hogan in New York.
This is NPR News.
This is KWGS. New medical marijuana packaging rules set to go into effect this fall are frustrating dispensary owners and patients. Lionel Ramos reports advocates took to the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority's Advisory Council to voice their concerns.
House Bill 4454 was a Republican-led effort meant to address a growing health concern, the consumption of high-dosage marijuana products by children. How? Forcing producers to not package or label their edible weed in a way that might be attractive to children. Per the bill, that means no depictions of food, animals, or any caricatures. But advocates and patients like Austin Jones and Nancy Wallace say the law is confusing and hard to follow. November 1st is when the new laws for packaging edibles and other forms of medical marijuana take effect. But advocates say producers aren't getting the help they need from the state authority to ensure timely compliance. In Oklahoma City, I'm Lionel Ramos.
One thing advocates say could help is a team within the Marijuana Authority tasked with reviewing packaging submitted by vendors before they buy it bulk. It's unclear what action the authority may take. In other news, 5 lions from the Oklahoma City Zoo have arrived at their new home in Tampa, Florida. The cats are moving across the country as part of a decision made by the Association of Zoos and Aquarium Species Survival Plan for African lions. Born in Oklahoma City in May of 2024, Herman, Lou, Pascal, Hugo, and Henry will be kept together as a pack. Busch Gardens in Tampa has prepared a 35,000 square foot habitat for the 5 lions. The new area comes as an expansion to the park's Edge of Africa exhibit. They will be joining hyenas Daisy and Casey, who already call Busch Gardens home. In Tulsa, I'm Angel Ford, and this is KWGS.
For NPR comes from this station and from Odoo, a platform dedicated to being flexible and bringing every part of business together, from CRM to inventory. Learn more about Odoo at odoo.com/NPR. From the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, supporting creative people and effective institutions committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. More information is at macfound.org. And from Fisher Investments, Fisher is committed to helping clients stay on track to reach their financial goals and enjoy a comfortable retirement. FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Layla Faldin.
I'm Michelle Martin. And I'm A. Martinez. Quite a few of today's most acclaimed musical artists spend time in the hip-hop collective known as Odd Future. There's Tyler, the Creator, Earl Sweatshirt, and Frank Ocean. Well, a teenager just getting her start in music was among them, Sid the Kid. She now just goes by Sid and went on to join the band The Internet, but they haven't released anything in 8 years, so recently she's focused on her solo work. Her latest album is named after the peach fuzz on her face. It's called Beard.
I was letting my facial hair grow. Just to see what I would look like with it, because I was starting to like my mustache, which, you know, is unconventional as a woman.
It's something I would think that being in the music industry forces, maybe make you feel insecure about it.
It was more society.
Society, okay.
Upbringing, you know? And also just being a young girl who had a mustache and like hairy legs and, comparing myself to other girls.
Go straight on.
And feeling like something was wrong.
But you feel good about it, though?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my wife likes it.
Yeah?
She likes my mustache. I shaved it too low one time, and she was like, oh, ew, oh my God. And I was like, what is happening? Like that, you know, like I never thought I would get that.
Oh,
no. Right.
It's like, wait a second.
And I'm not a man, so it's like...
I won't go through this again. So tired of making amends. I gotta do better.
So it's fair to call Beard a coming-of-age album for you?
Yeah. I feel like I'm blooming. I've always felt like a late bloomer.
I'm glad you called yourself a late bloomer, because my next thing was going to be, you're 34 years old. Why did it take this long for a coming-of-age album?
And this is the first time I'm releasing something and I have everything that I need out of life. My bases are covered. I'm really blessed.
Yeah, you just got married last year. Are you even a year in?
We didn't celebrate, but we just had our first anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And then you bought a house a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, that's really what did it. I realized through that process that maybe my dream all along was to be a homeowner, not an artist. Because now I feel so settled.
Yeah, I just wanna celebrate, make a toast. Never thought I'd make it here, but I did. Now I'm making renovations at the crib. I just bought another truck, I'm trying to flip. All the work I'm putting in on the low. I'm about to make it big, yeah.
Now, a while back, I spoke to Linda Perry. She wrote Christina Aguilera's song Beautiful, her hit song Beautiful, a lot of other hits too. My favorite song on her new album was kind of this bossa nova track. And you're smiling because I think you know where I'm going with this. And it might be my favorite song on your album, Beard. This is My Love. reasons why I like it. Number one, I mean, I don't know if anyone can be sad during a bossa nova song.
I know.
But I've heard bossa nova tracks on other artists' albums this year. So I'm wondering, like, is there something happening with bossa nova that is just being picked up on by artists?
Maybe it's something in the air. I mean, this song on my album came about pretty randomly. We were jamming, just in between songs. We started a jam session, and that's what this instrumental is. It's the one and only take of that jam session.
The one and only take?
Yeah, we didn't replay anything.
That's awesome. It's a one
real.
take, yeah. I remember interviewing you years ago with the internet, and I remember seeing you very kind of introverted.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you kind of wish you were like a fly on the wall almost, or maybe not even in the room in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
How did you get out of that?
Well, something that I thought about the other day is like, I feel like a lot of us, at least in my generation, I'll speak for millennials, we spent our 20s thinking that we were trying to find ourselves and figure out who we were, only to hit our 30s and realize what we've been doing is searching for acceptance of who we already were. And I think for me that's manifested with this album, with this title, because the truth is I am an introvert. It's just there's a level of acceptance to it now, whereas at one point I didn't know if I was an introvert or if I was just insecure.
I have trouble finding anything that's not a glowing review of what you've done as a solo artist and with the internet. Have you ever wondered why you were not on top 40 radio and why you're not more out there?
I've definitely wondered that before. That's never been an intention of mine when it comes to making the music.
Is it because you're an openly gay black woman who doesn't conform to beauty standards to be attractive to cisgender men?
You know, that's very possible. I'm sure it has something to do with it. Sometimes it's true that the world, quote unquote, isn't ready for certain things. It could be that, for sure.
Here we go. Hey, girl, you're my diamond ring. You give me everything.
That is Sid. Her new solo album is titled Beard. Sid, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Can't let you run away. You're like my spring.
This is NPR News.
Nursing is the largest healthcare profession in the U.S. and it's growing, but only around 1 in 8 nurses are men. Still, that's double what it was a few decades ago.
Will we ever be 100% gender neutral? I don't know that. Can we help move the needle a little faster? Sure, there's opportunities for that.
I'm Elsa Chang. One school's effort to draw more men into nursing. On All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, partnering with the Oklahoma Birth Equity Initiative to ensure healthy births with dignity and to reduce maternal health disparities. Information at okbei.org.
The listener-supported service of the University of Tulsa, Public Radio 89.5, KWGS HD1, Tulsa.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is likely to face a lot of questions today about the war with Iran when he appears on Capitol Hill. Hegseth is scheduled to testify to the Senate Appropriations Committee. He's expected to ask lawmakers for tens of billions of dollars more as part of a larger Pentagon spending package. Senator Chris Murphy is a Democrat.
First and most obvious question is, what is the end game? it appears that the war goals have been reduced to one, getting the Strait of Hormuz reopened. And one of the most important things we can do today is simply confirm that the administration has decided to narrow its war aims to simply getting that strait open. And we'll be asking the Secretary what the price that they will be willing to pay to get that done.
He was speaking to NPR's Morning Edition. The U.S. military has been stepping up its attacks on Iran as Iran continues to fire at commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Britain says Iran struck an oil tanker in the strait today, forcing the crew to abandon ship. Later this morning at the White House, President Trump will be meeting with Lebanon's president. The talks come weeks after Israel and Lebanon announced a framework agreement for Israeli forces to withdraw from southern Lebanon. This is NPR News from Washington. Heavy rains and strong winds are expected along coastal areas of Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana tonight and tomorrow as Tropical Storm Bertha moves northwest across the Gulf of Mexico. Bertha's top sustained winds are at 50 miles per hour. It's the second named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. Funeral services were held yesterday in Mississippi for an 18-year-old found dead off the state's coast earlier this month. Authorities say they're still investigating the cause of death for Nolan Wells. Elise Gregg with the Gulf States Newsroom and Mississippi Public Broadcasting reports.
Wells's funeral was a time to mourn and a call to justice, with the investigation ongoing and many key details still missing. Wells, who was black, traveled to Horn Island with friends for Independence Day and was the only one who didn't return. The Reverend Al Sharpton, who officiated the funeral, is one of several civil rights leaders working with the family.
An 18-year-old young man to no longer be with us. We want answers. And I think that for the family, the closure can come if there is justice.
Filmmaker Tyler Perry paid for the funeral and is working with Sharpton to offer a $100,000 reward for new information regarding Wells' death. For NPR News, I'm Elise Gregg in Ocean Springs, Mississippi.
Dow is up 227 points. I'm Dave Mattingly in Washington.
You've probably heard about a little parasite causing an explosive outbreak. Cyclospora is spreading gastrointestinal distress to thousands more people than usual this year. The CDC has linked a major cluster to iceberg lettuce from Mexico. That doesn't explain all the cases. What you need to know about Cyclospora next time on 1A.
Join us this morning at 9 on Public Radio 89.5.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by the founders of the Shining Honor Project, funding the cleaning and honoring of veterans' headstones by adults with developmental challenges, while building skills, confidence, and community for honor team members. More at shininghonor.org.
Made possible by your financial support. Public Radio 89.5, KWGS HD1 Tulsa.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Procter & Gamble, maker of Metamucil, made with psyllium, a plant-based fiber that helps support digestive health by trapping and removing waste, designed to be taken every day. Learn more at metamucil.com. And from Vanguard, with Vanguard Investor Choice, investors can have a voice in how their eligible Vanguard funds vote on key shareholder matters. Learn more at Vanguard.com/investor choice. This is NPR.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Layla Falden. Good morning. The new Air Force One is out of commission. Earlier this month, the New York Times reported the Secret Service urged President Trump to leave a NATO summit in Turkey on an older version of Air Force One instead of the Boeing 747 donated by Qatar last year. The reporting said that was because of security concerns. Then Trump talked about the Qatari plane after coming home from the World Cup final on Sunday.
Has a lot of capability, but as I understand it, in about a month or so, they're going to send it to have it be maxed out. So they're going to be sending it in. They'll have it be maxed out. It'll take about a month.
Here to help us understand what might be happening to the plane is Dan Lamothe. He covers the U.S. military for the Washington Post. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, hello.
So we heard the president talk about maxing out the plane. What does that mean?
Yeah, so the old Air Force One has some of the same capabilities that you'd expect in jets you'd find in combat. Missile warning sensors, kind of exquisite radars, flare dispensers, things that can help it if it were to be attacked. The new one, and it's been known really since the start, and this has been raised as a concern since really the Trump administration first announced that it would bring this plane on, wasn't built for that. So they sent it in, they gave it $400 million in upgrades, but it's always been very vague. What upgrades it got, what upgrades it didn't get, and clearly now that they're kind of seeing some of the concerns come up, they've decided to add additional capabilities. What they're adding now versus what they added some months ago, that has remained unclear. That theories start running into military capabilities and classification issues, and it's been vague, but clearly this plane did not have everything that the Air Force One had.
So the president admits this plane needs some upgrades, but then he bashes the New York Times for reporting about the concern. Why?
Yeah, I think you'd have to ask the president to that to some degree, but really I think what you're running into here is his concerns with the plane not standing up to scrutiny, really. This is a plane that everybody had questions about at the beginning. Wiring issues, communication issues, and defensive capabilities was always something that people who study these issues said that this would be a concern. It has become a concern.
How much risk would you say the president and his passengers faced on board the flight to Ankara for that NATO summit, given the Secret Service urged the president not to leave?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some amount of risk here. I think given what we didn't know the plane had or didn't have, it's a little challenging to assess. Other world leaders all flew into the same summit, so I think that's worth noting as well. But yeah, I mean, as this developed, and I think really what really may have changed the situation here on July 7th, as the president was in Turkey, they made the judgment call to start bombing Iran in a serious way again. That seems to maybe have had a factor on the risks here. You kind of shifted the situation on the ground while you were much closer to Iran than you otherwise would have been.
Dan Loth covers the military for the Washington Post. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Immigrant families pushed to leave the U.S. by the Trump administration have found themselves in difficult situations. Michigan Public's Hamish Ahmed reports on a family who returned to Venezuela just before disaster struck.
After being held in immigration detention for 3 months, Osmari Garcia agreed to a voluntary departure back to Venezuela. Her husband, Hector Marin, and their 6 kids would soon follow. 2 weeks after they reunited, 2 massive earthquakes devastated the region they live in.
Todo quedó irreconocible. Los niños están realmente traumatizados de ver tanta ruina.
Everything was left unrecognizable, Garcia said in a voice memo. The children are really traumatized from seeing so much ruin. The family hasn't lived in Venezuela for 9 years. The younger kids, ages 3 and 7, were born in Colombia and had never even been there. They all came to the U.S. through a Biden-era program for asylum seekers. The Trump administration ended that program. Garcia and Marin didn't know it, but the driver's licenses and work permits they had were no longer valid. When Garcia dropped the kids off at their elementary school one day last February, immigration officers arrested and detained her.
We were never afraid before, but after she was detained, then we were afraid to leave the house.
Maureen stopped going to work. The kids stopped going to school. Their savings ran out. Maureen was at a loss for what to do, until he remembered a flyer he saw in one of his kids' backpacks. It had information for Kristen Plonsky, who at the time worked for the Detroit School District and was helping immigrant families. As a health hub coordinator, Plonsky's job was to be a one-stop shop to connect families to everything from rental assistance to medical clinics. Then, 4 Detroit students were detained by ICE in quick succession last fall.
Since then, most of my job has been in some way related to the increased presence of immigration enforcement.
But even with her help, Maureen says that they couldn't lock her down forever. And Garcia couldn't bear to stay homes and to leave the life they had built in Detroit. Plonsky helped the rest of the family navigate travel arrangements while they waited for travel permits to come through.
Ya hemos cambiado el vuelo 3 veces.
We had to change the flights 3 times. She's the one that got them all changed. So she's been there, and we couldn't have done it without her.
Plonsky says she doesn't think people who say things like they should have come here legally have any idea what the legal way is.
There are so many different pathways, and even the people who are in those pathways and have done it the right way, like they're saying they should, are getting taken.
The family, like many others voluntarily returning to their home countries, is also having a hard time getting the $2,600 stipends the Department of Homeland Security promised to anyone who self-deports. Plonsky is still helping the family collect that cash for each of the kids. Garcia says the stipends have become even more vital after last month's earthquakes.
Quedar sin nada, o sea, lo poco que teníamos acabando de llegar.
We left with the little that we had, Garcia said, and even that's gone now. For NPR News, I'm Beanish Ahmed in Detroit.
Ke servis guys, 2.000, murah banget, $2.000. $2.000. Utang ku akeh.
This is NPR News.
Finding a new route.
Good morning, I'm Gabrielle Singoleta at the BBC. India's main opposition leader, Rahul Gandhi, has called for the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, to resign over a police crackdown on student protests in Delhi. Nearly 200 people were injured in Monday's march towards Parliament. The BBC's Azadeh Moshiri is in Delhi.
And some people who told me they travelled from outside of Delhi to turn up, and they have chosen it as a vehicle to express how deeply frustrated they are in India, demanding the resignation of the education minister. But also, they've said when it comes to high unemployment, which is double digits for young people here in India.
The new British Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, has been hosting his first cabinet meeting a day after taking over from Keir Starmer. He started the day with a tax cut on energy bills. Here's Rob Watson.
Andy Burnham wants to keep his promise to try and do something to help people with the extraordinary cost of living in the UK. I think it's also made as a stark contrast to what happened at the start of Keir Starmer's government. What did he do on energy? He took away the idea of subsidies for older people who were getting help with energy bills. So it's to contrast with that.
And the United Nations says that 144 migrants and refugees were reported dead or missing off the coast of Mauritania last week. They were attempting the dangerous journey from West Africa to Spain's Canary Islands and onward to Europe. I'm Gabrielle Singoleta at the BBC in London.
I'm Scott Tong. Slate Auto is trying to shake up the industry with a customizable electric truck. Basic model is under $25,000.
We're super excited to prove that we can design, engineer, assemble all American employees, and it's affordable and it's something that people love.
Next time, here and now.
This afternoon at 1 on Public Radio 89.5.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by Mother Road Market, Tulsa's food hall, featuring local restaurants and pop-up concepts with weekly entertainment and summer events on Route 66 at the corner of 11th and Lewis or motherroadmarket.com.
National Public Radio for Northeastern Oklahoma from the University of Tulsa. Public Radio 89.5, KWGS HD1.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from BritBox, from the world of Jane Austen and the Other Bennett sister to the rolling Yorkshire Hills and A Woman of Substance. BritBox is committed to helping viewers find their next escape. Streaming now at BritBox.com. And from Schwab, offering the Schwab Teen Investor Account, where teens can gain hands-on investing experience. It's co-owned by parents and teens, so parents can monitor the account while teens learn how to invest. More at schwab.com.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Layla. The Aspen Acres wildfire is the most destructive so far this fire season in Colorado. More than 300 homes have been lost. It started in June, but victims are only now being allowed to return to their properties and see the destruction firsthand. KRCC's Brianna Heaney takes us to Beulah, Colorado.
At a National Guard checkpoint outside the southern Colorado town, dozens of cars and trucks are lined up. Ned Pittman, Doc, age 70, is in one. He looks a little like a wizard in a big straw hat with a flowing white beard, and has a re-entry permit. It allows him to be escorted back into his neighborhood.
Howdy.
Here for the 8 a.m. escort?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. I'll have you pull down just right now.
This is the first time a lot of the people who live in these forested hills have seen each other since the Aspen Acres fire reached them.
Howdy. How y'all doing? Yeah, been waiting here quite a while. It looks like a nuclear bomb up there.
How are you doing?
I'm doing better.
Are you?
Better than I was, yeah.
The morning the fire got here, Pittman says he didn't think his place was in danger.
It was clear as a bell out, no smoke or nothing.
He drove to nearby Pueblo for a doctor's appointment. The smoke plume that formed later was his only sign that something was wrong.
I never even got a warning. A pre-evac warning or nothing.
We drove around a barren, burned mountain into Beulah, where about 800 people lived.
It'll start getting darker and darker now.
Further in, closer to Pittman's house, the color gradient of the landscape quickly turns black. Few houses stand untouched. Through the shadowy valley of destruction, some folks we pass survey their properties, firefighters by their side. Others are doubled over or sitting in the ash with their heads in their arms.
My property. Oh, that takes my breath away. Yeah, this used to be, you couldn't see 20 feet. It used to be so thick. That was used to be a green truck. That was a trailer right there.
Now, the blackened landscape feels creepy. Scorched trees arch over ground that's a velvety charcoal color. Pittman lived and raised his 4 children here. It's now a pile of mostly light gray ash and rubble. The only thing intact was a standing bathtub and a cooking range.
Devastation so overwhelming.
Pittman, like a lot of folks who live in the area, told me, doesn't have fire insurance. There are a lot of uncertain days ahead. He's not sure what he's going to do. In the meantime, he's been staying with his brother in Pueblo and is taking things one day at a time. The sprawling Aspen Acres fire is still not fully contained. Local governments have lifted evacuation orders in some areas and issued new ones in others. About 3,000 people are currently out of their homes. Fire managers say it may continue burning until it snows. For NPR News, I'm Brianna Heaney in Beulah, Colorado.
Tomorrow, on Morning Edition, a conductor of the BBC Symphony Orchestra traces her family to Ukraine and is on a mission to share classical music by Ukrainian composers rarely heard in the West and sometimes not even in Ukraine. Listen in the NPR app or on this public radio station. This is NPR News.
This is KWGS. The Cherokee Nation estimates thousands of documents relating to its principal chiefs are scattered across the country. Thomas Pablo reports the tribe wants to reclaim as many as possible.
Cherokee Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. created the Principal Chiefs Records Task Force in April. It released a report last week listing the possible locations of thousands of documents related to the nation's highest executive office. Those locations span institutions across the country. Hoskin says the tribe will seek maximum repatriation.
Honestly, they should be on notice that we have this interest and this capacity in making really the rest of the century of Cherokee repatriation. That's what the century needs to be. And that's not a statement born of any sort of hostility towards institutions. It's to say we want to open a dialogue, but it needs to be a real dialogue and it needs to produce real results.
Hoskins says he hopes the work will extend beyond his tenure and across generations. In Oklahoma City, I'm Thomas Pablo.
On a different note, Tulsa Police Department Chief Dennis Larson has announced his retirement from the force. The statement, which was shared via email on Monday, comes just 2 years after Larson was promoted to chief. During his 47 years in TPD, Larson served as a captain and a major before taking on Deputy Chief of Police over Operations in 2007. He later served as Deputy Chief of Police over the Investigations Bureau before his promotion to chief in 2024. Mayor Monroe Nichols took to social media not long after the announcement to thank the chief for his decades of service. Nichols wrote, "There will be time in the coming weeks to talk more about the hiring process to fill Larson's shoes." Larson's last day with TPD will be September 30th. In Tulsa, I'm Angel Ford, and this is KWGS.
And Drug Administration did an about-face in its hunt for the source of the Cyclospora outbreak. On Friday, it said it identified the parasite, which can cause intense diarrhea and other illness, when a sample of iceberg lettuce from Taylor Farms in Mexico. But on Sunday, it retracted those results. The agency said a review revealed that that finding was a false positive. NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports on this confusing situation.
There are now over 1,600 confirmed cases of the illness caused by this water and foodborne parasite, and a growing number of suspected cases in the thousands. Microbiologist Donald Schaefer at Rutgers University says tracing parasitic disease can be tricky because it's hard to identify from small samples that might not represent the entire crop. Often, if the source is found, it's based on patients' recollections of what they ate in recent weeks.
We know we have a lot of sick people in Michigan and Ohio, and we know that some of those people ate Taco Bell lettuce, and CDC and FDA believe that it's the lettuce that made them sick.
That is now all health officials have to go on with the current outbreak in the absence of genetic tests confirming the presence of Cyclospora on lettuce or any other source. Despite its retraction, the FDA yesterday said it still believes this multi-state outbreak to be linked to iceberg lettuce sourced from Taylor Farms in Mexico. That company had supplied Taco Bell and sold products to Walmart. It recalled its lettuce last week. To complicate matters, since the 1990s, Schaffner says there have been several Cyclospora outbreaks occurring every summer, though this year is set to break records. He says often outbreaks aren't connected or even traceable to food. A person can also get sick from drinking or swimming in contaminated water, for example.
Just because you're sick with Cyclospora right now doesn't mean that you're part of this cluster of cases that have an epicenter in Michigan and Ohio.
For now, while health officials suspect the primary contaminant is lettuce, the recommendation remains to avoid eating any of the recalled product and to wash hands and food surfaces. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
We've been taking stock recently of science that has not been done under President Trump. Federal advisory groups help guide the government on research and science issues. Since Trump took office, dozens of those groups have been canceled or frozen. Among them is one dedicated to preventing infection in healthcare settings. NPR's Katia Riddle reports.
Drug-resistant organisms are a vexing problem for infectious disease experts. For years, doctors have been waging war on dangerous bacteria like MRSA. But in the last decade, a new villain appeared on the scene, a fungus called Candida auris.
It was first identified in the ear canal of a nursing home patient in Japan in 2009. And it really wasn't around before that.
Scott Roberts is an infectious disease doctor at Yale. He treated one of the first patients in the U.S. with this fungus.
This was maybe 2018, 2019, and at the time, not much was known about it. And, to this day, we're still trying to grapple with where this came from, why is it spreading so fast? And it's a bit of a mystery.
Candida auris can survive on surfaces and cause life-threatening infections, especially in people who are immunocompromised. Once it takes up residence in a hospital, it's hard to evict. For all these reasons, says Roberts, he was grateful when the federal government stepped in to help figure out how to fight it by bringing it to the attention of the Healthcare Infection Control Practices Advisory Committee, or HICPAC. But in March of last year, that committee was terminated along with its efforts to help fight Candida auris.
And so to hear that we're losing a federal advisory committee on this and we're losing federal assistance is only going to make the problem worse.
Fighting dangerous fungi was one of many problems that the committee was working on. It was staffed by a group of volunteers that brought perspectives from healthcare facilities, big and small, rural and urban, to work together on problems. The group would then make recommendations to the CDC to help guide policy. Hillary Babcock was one member. She says the reason this committee was important was not just because of their expertise. The CDC is already full of experts, she says.
They don't need help necessarily knowing, like, what does the literature show? But what they don't do is work in hospitals and healthcare systems.
Babcock is an infectious disease doctor in St. Louis. She says having this range of experts to give real-time feedback to the people working inside the federal government was invaluable.
So that's really what the committees bring to that space, is that sort of lived experience of how this guidance works in those settings.
In an email, representatives from the White House did not comment on this particular committee, but said that all committees that were terminated were, quote, found to be redundant, unnecessary, or ineffective, unquote. But industry groups like the American Association for the Advancement of Science have raised concerns that cutting these committees will hamstring urgently needed research. Carrie Wallenitz has for years worked with these federal advisory committees.
As a federal official, I found advisory committees to be really helpful to me in my sort of thinking and policy development.
Wallenitz was an official at the NIH. Now she works in healthcare policy and advocacy.
They would like challenge me on things that I thought to be true. They brought up, real world issues that me from my sort of seat within government would not necessarily have thought of.
In the case of Candida auris, the number of cases in the U.S. continues to grow. Scott Roberts, the infectious disease doctor, says one of the reasons is that protocols around disinfecting for this specific fungus are not well understood.
If you don't adequately disinfect that medical equipment before you go to the next patient, you really risk transmitting it from one person to another.
Roberts says that's part of the reason this committee's work was so critical.
We really rely on federal assistance here to say, this is a recommended screening protocol. Everybody should be doing this.
Without these recommendations and guidelines, says Roberts, doctors like him are left with a patchwork of protocols. And that's no match for a sneaky drug-resistant fungus. Katie Riddle, NPR News.
Later today, on All Things Considered, Jackie and Shadow are a pair of internet-famous bald eagles. Their nest is live-streamed 24/7. That nest is about 90 miles east of LA, near land that is cleared for development. The group behind the live stream is afraid that will hurt Jackie and Shadow. Eagle experts are less certain. Listen in the NPR app or on this public radio station. This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Leila Fadel.
And I'm Michelle Martin.
On the next Fresh Air, Andre DeShields. He won a Tony for his performance in Hadestown. He's also in the new film of last year's London revival. He's now on Broadway in Cats the Jellicle Ball. DeShields describes himself as Afro-queer, longtime HIV survivor, and an unreformed hippie who grew up in Baltimore's innermost inner city of China.
This afternoon at 3 and tonight at 9 on Public Radio 89.5.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by Phil Brook, presenting Roadside Abstractions, Route 66, and American Modernism. Take a road trip through modern art alongside iconic American artists, July 29th through January 3rd. More at philbrook.org.
National Public Radio from the University of Tulsa. Public Radio 89.5 KWGS HD1 Tulsa.
Turn right. A parasite is sweeping the country, and it may be in your salad. From WAMU and NPR in Washington, this is 1A. Hi, I'm Nyla Boodoo in for Jen White. Thousands of people across 34 states have been sickened by the cyclospora parasite this summer, the worst outbreak on record.
For the people saying, oh, I want to get the parasite, I want to lose weight, trust me,
you're gonna go insane by day 4 of like not being able to even eat bone broth.
The CDC has linked a major cluster to shredded iceberg lettuce. Today, what cyclospora is, how to protect yourself, and what the outbreak tells us about the state of food safety in America. And we want to hear your questions. Email us at 1a@wamu.org.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Julie Hurst. The Federal Appeals Court is clearing the way for the release of recorded interviews of former President Biden. NPR's Gary Johnson reports the Conservative Heritage Foundation had sued for access to the recordings.
The years-old audio recordings contain interviews of Joe Biden by the man who helped ghostwrite his memoir. A prosecutor who investigated Biden's alleged mishandling of classified information later obtained the recordings. That prosecutor, Rob Hur, declined to charge Biden with wrongdoing, saying his age and faulty memory would be obstacles in any criminal case. The Heritage Foundation has been pushing for access to the tapes, and a federal appeals court has found there's a substantial public interest in the recordings. The appeals court in D.C. gave the former president until early August to pursue any additional legal steps. Biden had argued to release the tapes would violate his privacy. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump is meeting with Lebanon's president today in Washington as the State Department tries to push forward a peace process between Israel and Lebanon. As NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports, the U.S. is trying to give Lebanon's president a boost.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he thinks it will be a good meeting at the White House, and President Joseph Aoun will be able to return to Lebanon and say he's getting real results for his people, not Hezbollah or Iran. At the moment, Israel controls much of southern Lebanon as it battles the Iranian-backed Hezbollah, which has been firing rockets across the border into Israel. The U.S. has negotiated what are called pilot zones to allow Lebanon to reestablish sovereignty in several areas in the south. Rubio says the U.S. is also talking to Lebanon about international investments and resuming flights from the U.S. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
The White House says the newest jet to serve as Air Force One will be taken out of service to undergo upgrades. NPR's Joel Rose reports aviation experts question whether 1 month is enough time for significant changes.
The White House says the newest Air Force One will be out of service for about a month in the fall, while it receives, quote, upgrades and enhancements. The Boeing luxury jet was donated by Qatar last year. It was retrofitted so quickly that some aerospace experts say it is not as secure as other Air Force One jets. Richard Abulafia with Aerodynamic Advisory says 1 month isn't enough time to change that.
The idea that anything meaningful can be accomplished in this limited amount of time is somewhat ridiculous. I mean, this is a multi-year process.
Abulafia and others say they were surprised to see the president fly in this plane to a meeting in Turkey earlier this month. Joel Rose, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up 232 points, the NASDAQ up 195, S&P 500 up 35. You're listening to NPR News. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is slamming President Trump's imposition of an additional 50% tariff on a range of Canadian goods. Trump says Canada unfairly discriminates against American autos, dairy, and alcohol. The tariffs go into effect in 30 days and range from Canadian wine to hockey sticks to cement. Carney says that violates the USMCA trade agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Earlier this year, Trump said he wouldn't renew that trade agreement. North Korea's foreign minister met with Russia's Vladimir Putin and vowed to further strengthen their alliance. This as Russia and North Korea are growing increasingly critical of the U.S. and its Asian allies. NPR's Se-Woon Gong has more from Seoul.
Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee said her country will continue to steadfastly support Russia, calling Putin the closest and dearest friend of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. North Korean state media said the two countries discussed key international affairs of mutual interest and added they were aligned on all issues. North Korea has provided Russia with weapons and more than 14,000 troops for its war against Ukraine, according to Ukraine's military intelligence. In the meantime, North Korea has ignored Washington's calls for dialogue and fortified its border with South Korea. Russia's foreign ministry recently criticized South Korea for pursuing defense industrial cooperation with NATO. 세은공 NPR News 서울.
And I'm Janine Hurst, and you're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, investing in creative thinkers and problem solvers who help people, communities, and the planet flourish. More information is available at hewlett.org.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by Green Country Habitat for Humanity, whose home buyer program can help make home ownership possible for local families, opening doors to stability and generational wealth. More about moving from renting to home ownership at greencountryhabitat.org.
National Public Radio from the University of Tulsa. Public Radio 89.5 KWGS HD1 Tulsa.
Isinya komputernya masih kemarin.
This is 1 a.m. Naila Budu in for Jen White. You may have heard of a parasite that's causing some gastrointestinal distress. Here's what people are saying online.
I have the parasite that's going around.
Cyclospora. Yes, the explosive diarrhea parasite.
I have been victimized by cyclosporiasis. I think that's how you say it. I started having severe nausea, vomiting, and explosive diarrhea at the same time. And then I had fatigue, I had chills, I had sweats, I had a low-grade fever, and I had severe abdominal pain. My stomach hurts. It's like cramping. It feels like someone is squeezing your insides or punching you from the inside out and trying to get out. It hurts so badly. I've had it for about 4 days now. I have lost weight, so that's nice. Like, appetite gone. Today I had one meal, immediately came out of me. Like, we're talking within 10 minutes.
The parasite Cyclospora has sickened thousands of people across 34 states this summer. That's more than 6 times the number reported at this point last year. The CDC has linked a major cluster to shredded iceberg lettuce at Taco Bell in some states. And Taylor Farms de Mexico has now pulled all of its iceberg lettuce from the U.S. market. But with an outbreak this large, experts say there's likely to be more than one source. Today, we're here to answer your questions and ours. What cyclosporiasis is, how you get it, and why investigators have had such a hard time finding the source. Later in the show, you're also going to hear from Michigan's chief medical officer about how the state with the largest number of cases is coping so far. But first, joining us from Bellingham, Washington, is journalist Helena Bodemiller-Evich. She's founder and editor-in-chief of Food Fix, an online publication about food policy. She's covered many foodborne illnesses and outbreaks over the course of her career. Helena, welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for having me. And Caitlin Rivers joins us from Baltimore. She's an epidemiologist and directs the Center for Outbreak Response Innovation at Johns Hopkins University. She's the author of the book Crisis Averted, The Hidden Science of Fighting Outbreaks. Her work focuses on how outbreaks are detected, investigated, and contained. Caitlin, thank you for joining us as well.
Great to be with you.
And we want to hear from you listening. Have you been diagnosed with cyclosporiasis? That's the illness caused by the cyclospora parasite. Maybe you have questions for our panel about what you should be doing to stay safe. You can email us 1a@wamu.org. Caitlin, can we start with the basics? What is cyclosporiasis and how do you get it?
Cyclosporiasis is a parasitic infection. You become infected by consuming contaminated food or water. Often in the United States, previous outbreaks have been linked to imported fresh produce, and so that's why we've been hearing a lot about whether the source is iceberg lettuce or what investigators are looking for. Cyclosporiasis causes weeks of relapsing diarrhea, so you may get better and then you get worse again, you get better and you get worse again, and it's a very unpleasant illness.
Helena, we got this email from Peggy in Michigan who says earlier reporting said that cyclospora is not transmitted person to person. This item has disappeared in current reporting. Can you please clarify?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think one of the really hard things about cyclospora is just how little we know about it in the U.S. It has, as was just mentioned, mostly been something we've thought about with imported food or traveling abroad. And so we have a real dearth of research in the U.S. There's only a handful of researchers. We do not think that it spreads person to person. It's mostly through human feces or, as was just mentioned, contaminated water, contaminated food. But we're also now seeing some reports of people getting this infection at pools pools or splash pads because chlorine does not easily kill the parasite. And so I think we need a lot more research. Right now, though, the biggest concern is certainly contaminated food and water.
Caitlin, a member of the 1A Text Club wrote, what is the difference between this cyclospora parasite and other intestinal parasites?
There are multiple different kinds of parasites that you can get from contaminated food and water. Cyclospora is moderately common in the United States. We record about 3,000 to 4,000 cases on average. It is treatable with antibiotics, whereas some other parasitic infections are treatable with anti-parasite medications. So there are a few differences, but there's a lot of similarities. The diarrhea, the weight loss, the abdominal discomfort. So again, a very unpleasant illness and certainly one worth avoiding.
How is it different from food poisoning? I think people are much more familiar with foodborne illnesses like salmonella or E. coli.
Well, cyclosporiasis does not transmit person to person, and it does not necessarily come from shared food that was left out too long. That's a big distinction. When we think about cyclosporiasis outbreaks, we think about imported fresh foods, whereas a salmonella or an E. coli outbreak is more often associated with poor food handling practices. For example, if you leave a meal out on the counter too long, it allows the bacteria to replicate, or if a food handler doesn't wash their hands. The consequence of that difference is that the more traditional, if you will, foodborne outbreaks are smaller in scope because there's only so many people who can be affected by a dish that was left out on the counter too long. Whereas with this cyclosporiasis outbreak, when we're thinking about imported foods that have gone to as many as 27 states, we're looking at a much bigger footprint.
Caitlin, there are cases of cyclosporiasis, as you've noted, every year in the U.S. When did this outbreak start to get attention from folks?
The data that reflects the number of cyclosporiasis cases reported in the United States started to increase in May, which is typical. The standard season is May to August, and so I think we're still learning when the outbreak began relative to when the traditional season started, but certainly by late June, early July, public health officials were confident that there was an outbreak underway. And so we're now at least 3-4 weeks into this outbreak and still learning new things every day.
Lena, FDA announced Taylor Farms is volunteering recalling all iceberg lettuce shipped from central Mexico to the U.S. The lettuce was linked to cyclosporiasis cases traced to Taco Bell locations in 5 states. What do we need to know about the recall first?
Yeah, so the recall is for iceberg lettuce that is from central Mexico from Taylor de Mexico. So most of this lettuce went to food service, not retail. So it went to places like restaurants and hospitals, Taco Bell, as you mentioned. There was some iceberg lettuce that was recalled from Walmart under the Market Side brand name. Consumers can go, you can just Google FDA, iceberg lettuce recall, and you can get all of the details. That product should be discarded. You can go back to your retailer and get a refund. If you have symptoms, you should talk to your doctor. But right now, it appears that this particular cluster that they have identified, which is across 5 states and thousands of cases, is likely linked to this lettuce that was imported from Mexico. FDA officials have been very careful to note, however, that there are multiple outbreaks under investigation. And as was just mentioned, we have a cyclospora season now in the U.S. This is an emerging issue. And so there are likely multiple clusters going on caused by multiple things, which has added a lot of confusion, understandably, for consumers during this time.
Alina, can you explain a little bit about this cyclosporiasis season and what's driving that longer-term trend of rising cases in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that has really been underreported, underexplained during this current situation. Unfortunately, over about the past decade, we have seen a rise in cyclospora cases every summer. We've been seeing sort of a slow uptick in the number of sort of natural increase in cases we've had in the U.S. every summer between usually May and August. Also, there's always been some level of travel, where people travel to another country and they get cyclospora and then they come home and it's diagnosed. But we're seeing increasingly domestically acquired cases
many times from imported fresh produce, but we've also seen some outbreaks tied to domestic produce from California and even Florida. And so there is some concern that this might be driven by changes in the climate. A warming climate can change where different bugs thrive and take hold. And so there's a lot we still don't know about this parasite, but there are some concerns that we're seeing a general trend change, and some of that may be driven by climate change.
Caitlin, can I ask you about testing? We've heard from the FDA that a positive cyclospora test of lettuce from Taylor Farms to Mexico was actually a false positive, but that the lettuce is still being recalled. Why is cyclosporus particularly difficult to trace compared to other foodborne pathogens?
Yeah, because it's a parasite, it can't be cultured, and so it's hard to get an adequate sample to really get a close look at the bug. It's also not present in every component of the food item, so you could have a bag of lettuce, if you will, and test part of it, and the other part doesn't have the contaminant, but it is nonetheless a contaminated product. That is making it difficult to diagnose or to take a closer look actually at the food items that are under investigation. But we also see difficulties in diagnosis at the patient level. So cyclospora is not on the standard panels that a doctor may run for a patient who has diarrhea. It has to be specially requested. And so the fact that this is a parasite, and a fairly uncommon one at that, is introducing multiple challenges into finding the edges of the outbreak and tracing it back to its source.
We're talking to journalist Helena Vodemiller-Evich, founder and editor-in-chief of Food Fix. That's an online publication about food policy, and epidemiologist Caitlin Rivers. She's the author of Crisis Averted, The Hidden Science of Fighting Outbreaks. Coming up, we hear from Michigan's chief medical officer about what it's like to be at the epicenter of an outbreak of this scale and what the investigation actually looks like on the ground. And we're still taking your questions and comments. We're going to be doing that all hour, answering your questions about cyclospora. You can email them to 1a@wamu.org. I'm Nyla Budu. This is 1A from WAMU and NPR. Turn left.
Jadi ngobrol gak ada penyakit lain.
I'm Scott Tong. Slate Auto is trying to shake up the industry with a customizable electric truck. Basic model is under 25 grand.
We're super excited to prove that we can design, engineer, assemble all American employees. That's affordable and it's something that people love.
Next time, here and now.
This afternoon at 1 on Public Radio 89.5.
PFLAG Tulsa is hosting a dinner and community conversation to discuss how public policy impacts families, featuring recent qualitative research showing how specific public policies impact family systems. It will be followed by a panel with local leaders to look at evidence-based strategies to build a more inclusive city. The program takes place Thursday, July 23rd at 6 o'clock at Phillips Theological Seminary. The event is free and open to the public. Registration is at tulsapflag.org.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, partnering with the Oklahoma Birth Equity Initiative to ensure healthy births with dignity and to reduce maternal health disparities. Information at okbei.org.
Public Radio 89.5 KWGS HD1 Tulsa. National Public Radio in HD from the University of Tulsa.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from DuckDuckGo, a private search engine and browser. DuckDuckGo believes AI should be optional and private. Now with Duck.ai, users can chat privately with AI. Learn more at Duck.ai. And from FJC, a foundation of donor-advised funds, working to maximize the impact of charitable giving and to create customized philanthropic solutions. Learn more at fjc.org.
Ya emang kalau game
This is
grinding,
NPR.
ya emang gitu sih.
I'm Nyla Budu, this is 1A. Michigan is at the center of a cyclospora outbreak, and the numbers there are staggering. The state has reported more than 6,000 cases of cyclosporiasis. In a typical year, Michigan sees about 50 cases. More than 100 people say they were hospitalized. Here with us to talk about it is Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian, Michigan's chief medical executive and a member of Governor Gretchen Whitmer's cabinet. Dr. Bagdasarian, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
We're also continuing to hear from you. A member of the 1A Text Club writes that he thinks he has cyclosporiasis. It's been almost a week. Time for doctor's help. I'm using Imodium, adult Pedialyte, eating bland foods, avoiding veggies and fruit. I've lost over 3 pounds. I've never had a fever, but I have the other symptoms. Not fun. Calling out for work has not been an option. This has been brutal. You can continue to send your questions or comments to 1a@wamu.org. Dr. Bagdasarian, you now have more than 6,000 laboratory confirmed cases. When did you first realize something was out of the ordinary? What did the early days of your investigation look like?
Harus punya ID.
Well, we saw a really strong signal that something was happening around early July.
Berapa?
So
Iya
July
Pak, ya
1st
Roblox.
was our first
Ganti
press
aja
release.
ganti
There was
game
something
lain
going
tuh,
on.
selain Roblox
The
ada tuh
cases
apa
that
ya?
were
Tapi aku
reported to
lupa
us
namanya.
were folks who started
Ada
experiencing
yang kayak Roblox
symptoms
tapi
towards the end of June. And
namanya
we've now
apa ya,
had
lupa.
sort of 2 peaks when we look at our data of cyclosporiasis here in Michigan. The first one occurring at the end of June, and the next one happening in early July.
How does this work? Like, how does tracing work? Your team has conducted 2,700 interviews so far. Who's doing those interviews? What do they look like?
Well, as of today, we actually have over 6,500 cases of cyclosporiasis, and we've completed almost 3,000 interviews. So we're working with our local health departments. We are bringing people in from all kinds of different work projects and different work streams who are contacting each one of those individuals with cyclosporiasis and doing a detailed interview on the foods that they consumed in the 2 weeks prior to their symptoms starting. Now, by the time they've tested positive for cyclospora, by the time that test has come back positive and we've heard about them, it means that their actual exposure to contaminated food could have been 4 weeks ago. So they're having to recall what they ate, where they went to eat, where they purchased their groceries from, several weeks before the interview takes place. And each one of these interviews takes about 45 minutes to conduct.
Wah, gak ada,
So that's
gak ada
a lot of
lagi kalau
manpower
mau
that the state of Michigan is devoting to this. Is it also, it sounds like local, you're having municipalities
ketentuannya
also
sekarang kan
involved in this?
harus umur itu
Well, our local health
KTP
departments are
KTP.
definitely part of this
Kalau
response.
di
A
sini namanya
huge part
KTP,
of
nggak tahu di
this
Malaysia apa ya.
response.
ID card,
Our
ID card
cases of
itulah.
cyclosporiasis have spanned across
Wajib
60
ID
Michigan
card.
counties.
Kalau
So
nggak
each one of
punya
those local
ID
health
card.
departments is also doing
Dia
a
pakai ID card
proportion of
ortu
these
lah, pakai ID
interviews.
card orang tua
So they are pulling staff from all kinds of different
Atau
areas.
ibumu
as are
suruh
we
daftar
here at the state
Roblox,
level.
mamamu
Dr.
daftar
Bagdasarian, how
Roblox.
did you come to identify then Taco Bell and bagged
Kamu yang
lettuce?
mainin
Was it
bisa
through these
sih, kalau
interviews?
orang tua mau ya.
So through the interviews, I can
Kalau
tell you what
ibunya,
our data is showing.
ibumu
You know,
mau.
we are able to cross-check all of this data and look for signals. And
Kalau nggak
by
mau,
far,
paksa,
the
paksa.
strongest signal that we are seeing is exposure to lettuce. We have to remember that not everybody recalls
Itu sih
what food
satu-satunya
they
cara
ate,
itu
and
sih
also
biar
there is
ada
background noise
ID-nya
as
biar
well. People eat all kinds
bisa
of different
balik
things in their day-to-day lives,
mikrofon di
especially over
Roblox.
a period of 2 weeks. But about 3/4
buat
of
yang
our
underage,
cases report
underage.
that they definitely had exposure to lettuce. Now, the type of lettuce varied.
Bro, akunya
There are folks who
ambil
said they
ID
had
card
exposure to
karena ya
pre-made
nggak boleh.
salad,
Ya,
romaine, iceberg.
itu
Some of
sih
them bought
ortu suruh
lettuce in grocery
daftar
stores. Some of
akun
them consumed
Roblox
lettuce at restaurants. But
sama
lettuce
plus
has
ID
definitely
card
been our
sih.
biggest signal. And that's why we issued specific recommendations on how to consume lettuce right now in Michigan in order to reduce your risk of cyclosporiasis. Now, I also have to say that there's a proportion of patients here, about 12% of patients, who don't recall specific exposure to lettuce or eating at a specific fast food chain. So there could be 2 things going on here.
So, Brian, I was going to ask if you have leads on other potential outbreak sources. Do you believe there could possibly be other outbreak sources then?
Ya nggak bisa.
It's very possible.
Ya
If you
itu
look at
pinjam
national
ID
coverage,
card
there are
aja.
a number of states that are experiencing higher than normal numbers of cyclosporiasis. In New York recently, there was an outbreak of cyclosporiasis linked to cilantro. Other states are seeing different patterns and different trends emerge. And what we really need is our federal partners at the CDC to compile all of this data and provide a holistic look across states. And of course, we need our colleagues at the FDA to do that trace back so they can find the specific item or items that have been contaminated.
We're speaking with Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian. She's Michigan's chief medical executive. Dr. Bagdasarian, are you getting the support you need from the CDC and the FDA?
Well, I'll tell you, I think people are doing the best they can under a really demanding situation, just as we are here in our state. And what I can tell you is, and everyone knows, that there have been cuts to public health over the last year. There have been cuts to the CDC, and a lot of that federal money is money that normally flows down to states and to local health departments. And based on that federal money alone, here in the state of Michigan, we have lost 23 staff in our Bureau of Infectious Diseases. We've lost one entire regional laboratory. Our local health departments have lost 123 staff. And as you know, those same cuts have been seen at the federal level in the CDC. So people are understaffed, they're overworked, they're stretched really thin. And we're doing this work while Michigan is experiencing unprecedented heat waves, unprecedented air quality. We're seeing a rise in communicable diseases, vaccine-preventable diseases like measles, mumps, pertussis. And so public health is being stretched in ways it's never been stretched before.
Can I ask what your message is then to people as they think about funding for public health, what you want people to know?
Well, I think for a lot of folks, they didn't really understand what it was that public health did. They didn't really understand the benefit to themselves, to their communities, their families. And then after COVID, people really associated public health with masking and vaccines and things that have become increasingly politicized. And I do want people to recognize that food safety is an integral part of the work that public health does. And if folks care about their food safety, if people think that 6,500 cases of a parasitic diarrheal disease in Michigan alone is unacceptable, then it's important that we fund at the national level, at the federal level, the infrastructure we need to prevent disease outbreaks like this from happening in the future.
Dr. Bagdasarian, do you expect the cases will level off now that we've seen the recall from Taylor Farms in particular?
I think that every recall is going to be helpful. However, I do have to say that we still are interviewing folks here who are not reporting exposure to iceberg lettuce. And we also know that people are reporting exposure to lettuce and produce in places other than just restaurant fast food chains. And so my concern is that the outbreak is bigger than the current recall covers. And we need our colleagues at the FDA to continue their traceback work and to make sure that we've identified any and all contaminated produce. I do think we've been issuing a lot of guidance about the safest ways to eat produce. We put out guidance on July 1st, July 4th, and I am hopeful that as people start taking those recommendations, as they start buying whole heads of lettuce versus bagged salad mixes, for example, that we start seeing a slowdown in some of these cases.
Dr. Bagdasarian, there's of course a lot of internet speculation around this outbreak. What can people do to help the investigation?
Well, number one, if you're having symptoms, if you're having watery diarrhea that is prolonged, that's not getting better, or it gets better and then comes back, and you live in a place like Michigan, it's important to seek medical care and to specifically ask to be tested for cyclospora. Not all stool tests will cover this particular parasite, so it's important to get tested. Those test results automatically come to the state of Michigan, and we're conducting our investigation, and you will likely get a call from someone asking you about your food history. And a lot of folks don't want to answer those calls or don't want to have a 45-minute interview with public health, but those interviews are really helpful in providing us with clues. So I would encourage people to get tested if you're symptomatic, get treated, of course, and then please cooperate with public health when we do reach out to you.
That's Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian, Michigan's Chief Medical Executive, a member of Governor Gretchen Whitmer's cabinet. Dr. Bagdasarian, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Epidemiologist Caitlin Rivers is still with us. She's the author of Crisis Averted, The Hidden Science of Fighting Outbreaks, and journalist Helena Bottomiller-Evich, founder and editor-in-chief of Food Fix, an online publication about food policy. Caitlin, can I just ask you to sort of follow up on what Dr. Bagdasarian was saying about the contact tracing, about the state of the public health system, particularly as we look at those cuts? I'm just curious your response to what she was describing to everybody.
I think what we heard from Dr. Bagdasarian is dead on and exactly what I'm hearing from my colleagues across the industry. There have been cuts after cuts after cuts to public health capacities, and it sounds like an abstract concept. We're talking millions of dollars, and as an everyday person, it's difficult to understand what that means in practice, but what it means is that we are more likely to face outbreaks like the current one that we are facing, and when something does pop up, our public health officials are under enormous strain to respond effectively. We see that really at all levels, the federal level, the state level, the local level. We see it across FDA, across CDC, really far-reaching consequences. And I do fear or worry that we're going to continue to see outbreaks that are difficult to manage because of these very real and consequential cuts.
Helena, we're getting quite a few questions about the idea of testing and particularly the technology used to determine whether or not you have the parasite. We got a message from Will in Maryland who said many other microorganisms can be quickly and reliably detected in lab specimens using methods based on DNA sequences specific to each particular pathogen. What is the difficulty in using PCR technology and DNA sequence recognition for cyclospora diagnosis? Helena, can I ask you to answer that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. As I mentioned earlier, we still have a lot of scientific gaps about this particular parasite, and it is a tricky one to begin with. The long incubation time makes it really hard to track down what food might be causing it, and then it's really hard to deal with in a lab. So not only trying to find it in lettuce is difficult, but then you can't grow it out to take a genetic fingerprint of that parasite and then match it with other cases, which is what investigators are able to do with pathogens like E. coli 0157H7 or Salmonella. And so investigators are really lacking one of the key tools they normally use to connect cases. So if this were if this were E. coli or Salmonella, we would be able to see pretty easily which cases were linked together and then, potentially linked to products. So it's just a really tricky bug to deal with. And I just want to follow up on this issue of funding. I think it is not only a question of whether or not our food safety system and our public health system is adequately funded, which basically everyone within this system agrees that it is under strain, that it is underfunded, understaffed at this point, and that is hampering the response, not only to cyclospora, but also other food safety issues. But we are not taking this seriously as a public health issue that's been emerging over the last decade. We need more research, and we need more focus on it. We just don't know enough, and this is a real food safety problem in the U.S., and it is not going away.
Caitlin, traditionally, where has that research and that funding come from? Has it been the federal government?
It's split between the federal government, some epidemiological investigation or research will be done at the state and local level, but also academia. And same cuts that we're seeing affecting our federal and state public health agencies have also been passed along to university professors and researchers. The number of grant dollars going out the door to fund all sorts of research, from biomedical research to food safety research to the kinds of research you may never think about, because it is let me just say that there have been massive cuts, and that is really affecting our ability to do the kind of work that could fill in the gaps that we're seeing currently.
We're talking to epidemiologist Caitlin Rivers and journalist Helena Bottomiller-Evich. Let's get to some of your questions. If we can do rapid fire here, we've got a lot of listener questions I'm hoping we can get through quickly here for a few minutes before the break. Helena, we have a question about the idea of using antibiotics and why should you use antibiotics to treat a parasite? Actually, Caitlin, can I have you answer that?
Yeah, sure. So it is a little bit surprising that an antibiotic is used to treat this parasite, but it blocks the folate pathway involved in replication and DNA synthesis for both bacteria and for cyclospora. And so it is the recommended treatment for this infection.
Helena, we got an email from Anthony who says if you've had the symptoms for a few weeks, do doctors still typically prescribe antibiotics, or is there a point you just have to get over it?
That's a good question. I think they do still treat it, and you should absolutely seek medical care if you've been having symptoms for a few weeks, not only to get treatment, but also so that you can be part of the investigation and help investigators track down what may have caused this. So absolutely do seek treatment. It can be a very long, miserable couple of weeks if you do not seek treatment.
Caitlin, Dave texts, how does the parasite get onto or into the produce?
It's part of the life cycle of the parasite. Part of the reason that it's not human to human, as we discussed earlier, is that it requires a period of maturation in the environment. Often it's introduced into the environment through contaminated water. So that could be through irrigation systems, through flooding. And so it's often, but not exclusively, through contaminated water that it gets onto the produce.
And is it only produce? Meat cannot become tainted from this parasite?
Historically, outbreaks have always been linked to produce, and also cooking does kill the parasite.
Helena, we got this question from Marlena, who emailed, how do I stay safe during this outbreak? It seems unhealthy to just avoid all fresh fruits and veggies, but I'm not sure what's hosting the parasite.
Yeah, it's a great question. I am not avoiding fresh produce. I don't think people need to. You can wash it thoroughly. You can also avoid bagged salad at this time if you're worried about it. And as was mentioned, you can cook your produce to 158 degrees, and that will kill the parasite if it's contaminated.
That's journalist Helena Bottomiller-Evich, founder and editor-in-chief of Food Fix, an online publication about food policy. We're also here with Johns Hopkins epidemiologist Caitlin Rivers. She's the author of Crisis Averted, The Hidden Science of Fighting Outbreaks. And we're hearing from you, a member of the 1A Text Club writes, maybe I have it. I definitely have the chronic watery stuff coming out of my...
Oh iya, dodot yang nggak demo. Kita download dulu biar download dulu yang nggak demo. Oke, kita download dulu yang nggak demo, kita rehat dulu aja lah sekalian ya. Hah? Lah, lapo iki terusan iki. Lah wis kongon tuku iku mau, mangane tuku. Tuku pas gak dis 170. Apa wis ben golek duit. Hah? Lo belum expansion DLC-nya itu. Ya oke, bye. Nek mau sih ambil DLC komplit. Ya per DLC ini ono 100, ono sing 50. Oleh map 100-an yeng. Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas. Hah? DLC. Oke, game 170. Ya duwe sing ngono ndek setim iki. Oke. 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 Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.